with all the roster moves that happened, what are the top 3 that you guys are excited about?
If the rumored Cloud9 roster is gonna happen,
That
that
is
one is
crazy,
number
right?
one.
Yeah,
Are you gonna be scared of that one?
They have a good team in that case.
it's a really good team, right? Like it's almost stupid how perfect it could be, and nobody even knew that it was a possibility going into the break. Like you just see it as like is this thing real?
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on BitSkins.com.
Best esports odds. VIP program and a variety of bonuses. Fast and easy withdrawals. Bet on every possible CSGO match and tournament, as well as any other esports game. Only on 22Bet.
Here's a good vibe, trend, 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 trend. Here's a good vibe, trend, 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 trend. Here's a good vibe, trend, 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 trend. Good vibe, trend, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of HLTV Confirmed. We got Dimitri again. There was no count. We'll work on the count. We have to dry run the count. And in the future, the count will be better. So I'm going to pretend that wasn't my opener. I didn't like it. I was still like bobbing along, waiting for the opening to end. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Counter-Strike fans around the globe, welcome to another episode of HLTV Confirmed, brought to you proudly by our sponsors. Obviously, we've got 22Bet. Remember to gamble responsibly. BitSkins if you want to get in the marketplace for some skins, and SteelSeries. And we've got... well, we've got some fun lads in the studio tonight, and there's going to be some noise getting made. You can see we have Snappi and we have sAw, and we've got Nerds in the background making a bit of noise as we kick it off. Now, that's a great little table setter right there. You see we've got Striker here. I said Dimitri's on the production, no prof this week. But is there going to be a bit of a zoo in there today, do you think, Snappi, or you're going to have a few words?
It seems like it. Nerds was scared of me showing his screen, so, well.
What's he working on, mate?
I don't know. He's going to do something stupid soon.
Okay, probably, yeah. All right. We don't even want to know where that one goes, but we don't have to wait too long to get into this here, Striker. We have a nice little combo this evening. Have we ever had the coach in-game leader combo before? I'm trying to think.
Not that I know of. I mean, Dimitri maybe might remember. I don't remember.
Yeah, we probably have. The people in chat, I'm sure, will let us know. But talking to them plenty of times before at events and in the past, we got what was it, Big Boss and Little Boss. So we got sAw here to join along for this as we, I guess, can talk about ENCE coming into the break that the two of you have had, and then everything that's happened in between for all these other squads as we get back into Counter-Strike. We've had some matches over the last couple of days for some qualifiers, right? There's been the J qualifiers that have been going on, so there's been some Counter-Strike that's been happening, and yeah, Blast starting tomorrow. But before we get there, I guess let's just have a general chit chat before we get into the hot seat, because I know, Striker, this week you've planned the itinerary of where we're going to go. So maybe we just saw going into the break, you win Dallas, you go over to Katowice, it's whatever, right? Everyone knows Katowice, it's whatever. Like that was whatever. But then you go into the break.
We're talking about Challenger, by the way, not like Katowice, the Katowice.
Oh yeah, so I guess
maybe
I should probably point that out.
Clarification.
Yeah, where but you're in the final there against Virtus Pro. But regardless, you go into the break, you've just won a trophy, everything's good, and then roster manias happen and all around you. How'd you spend your break? How was it? How was the time off? Did it feel like a deserved break after the Dallas win?
Yeah, of course, we finished the season great, so it felt good in that sense. And like you said, Katowice, well, maybe it wasn't the right Katowice, and maybe in a way the result didn't matter, even though we did want to win the event. But what was more in our minds was the Dallas win, and it gave us freedom of mind, so to say, that we can go into the break, enjoy the break, and we know we are in a good place. So it was actually really nice to go into the break like that and then enjoy the break rather than think too much about what might happen to us and what could happen.
Same to you, Snappi? Was it a bit more relaxing knowing you've come off the back of a win, so you're not worried about chopping and changing like everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was nice for once to be in a position where we felt we were going to come back and just keep doing what we're doing and not look at a potential change going forward or anything. The only one that could have come would be if someone came with some crazy bid for some player and he wanted to go. But I think after we won the event, it was pretty safe that we were going to keep the lineup, and it's been good to finally have a break that didn't mean doing work.
Or having to play CS2 just yet either. It must be, are you still...
Yeah, that also, but like just not having to scout players, me and or like talking with the staff or something like that. It's nice just having a actual break for once.
Did you do anything with the time?
Yeah, I went to a summer house with my girlfriend and my daughter, and then I went to Sweden to see my half siblings up there, and then I just chilled at home. Like, I think in the summer it's good to stay in Scandinavia because the summer is actually the only time of the year where the weather is actually nice. So I'll travel in the winter.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, let's do this. Dimitri, roll the bumper and let's get into the hot seat and we could get stuck into all the good stuff. All right, so as I mentioned, Striker this week, he's done the itinerary. He's been the travel man, planning on where we're going to go, the stops that we're going to take on this week's episode of HLTV Confirmed. Now, Striker, with that in mind, where did you plan on taking us first this evening? What was your port of call? What was the direction?
I mean, basically, Prop always goes like really point to point, like history, and goes through like every iteration of the roster. I'm much much more lazy than that. So I just like went with kind of like general points, and we can have touch on different iterations of ENCE as we go along. Because obviously there's some history for you two guys together. You've been, in the same team for what 2.5 years now or so, since like early 2021, right? So a lot of different iterations, a lot to go through, but obviously, you were there throughout it all. Throughout the whole international project that ENCE created back in like early 2021, as I said. So I kind of wanted to just start with the dynamic that you guys have formed together, from the get-go, because from what I remember, sAw still joined when like there was still the Finnish roster, but then very quickly after that, it started transitioning into that. So just tell me about how you two guys kind of started that relationship, how it started off in that early 2021 period.
Well, I think it was the implosion of the Finnish roster that we realized back then that we needed to start looking at international players, and then it was as simple as listing down players for different roles and think about what might be good. And it was actually really fast that I contacted Marco and we started to talk about options that what we could build. And instantly, or before even I contacted, I knew it would be important, the relationship between the coach and the in-game leader, that we do need to click and we do need to agree at least on certain things like principles, philosophy, and all this, so we can get on the same page and build a good project together. Because if the in-game leader and coach are not seeing eye to eye or are disagreeing on a lot of stuff, how to play Counter-Strike in general, then there will be problems, and then it will be visible for the other players, and there will be all sorts of clashes. So that was pretty much the beginning of it.
Did you guys hit it out from the start, or were there some like disagreements on like how to start the international roster? It's a big move, so obviously there's gonna have to be a lot of ideas.
I don't think there was like any big things, but obviously for 2.5 years we have been disagreeing or discussing certain things, getting semi-annoyed at each other. But I think it's normal when you work 8-10 hours a day a lot of the time and you spend a lot of time together, that there is certain disagreements. But I think the thing is the mutual respect overshadows that, because we are always able to, well, agree to disagree if it's a minor thing, or get on the same page if it's something big. And I think that's the key, that we see eye to eye on most things, and the things we don't, we usually resolve, or we just agree to disagree if it's something that isn't really that important. It's also fine to have differing opinions at the time. If me and Neto thought exactly the same, it would be bad. He needs to challenge me. I sometimes also need to challenge certain things he says, and I think that's a good working relationship.
Well, coming back into the break now, right? So you guys are obviously at a boot camp. We see the players behind you. You come into the new season. Do the two of you get together before you start talking to everybody else and discuss how you want to approach everything as a team, or how does that relationship work getting back into the season?
There was some brief talks, but I would say this season was a bit different than the previous ones because we knew what we had from the previous seasons. We didn't need to do player changes. So in a way, we are more secure. It's not to say that we don't think about improving and all that, but it was different in that sense. That is maybe more about coming back, recapping the things we have, and then actually improving small stuff rather than thinking about how is this player gonna fit in. Do we need to do adjustments with the roles so much? Even though we might have done something here and there, but it was different in that sense.
Okay. Is it hard to keep the, like, because you finish the season with momentum, but then you go into the break and now you have to restart it? Like, I imagine that's a challenge. Like, that's something that you have to tackle here, and like it's like you're not resting, because I don't imagine you're going to rest on your laurels or anything, but you have to go from a long break into getting everybody back up to where they were, into knowing that you can win and trying to still run with that feeling. I imagine that's not easy.
I don't think it's the hardest, because I think people are just happy for once that we already have a base. So every time we come out of a player break, we never have a base. We have to build it, we have to rush it, then we have to go through 6 maps, and every small details need to be fixed. Everyone needs to get on the same page. This is the first time where we actually came back from a break, and we have our foundation. Obviously, we need to recap what we have. People have been on vacation, but we can like just get slowly back into it and then slowly add things, which is actually something that motivates you in a way, because you're not starting from zero like normally.
Was it always that hard? I mean, you were talking about the previous 2 off seasons. I mean, the first one, that was Sampaios, and I'm missing the other one. That's the changes that happened at the time.
Baldo, right?
Oh yeah, there you go.
No, but like essentially since we started, there has constantly been changes. Like first it was Elo to Hades, like in May, June or something like this.
Yeah.
Then it was Dodo in the next winter season. Then in the summer it was Hades, and then Spinks got sold. Then after this it was Valde. Obviously it was 1 month into the season, but same. Like it's the same situation. So every like 6 months we had a change. Some was forced. Like one was forced, I guess, and the rest was done by ourselves. But it's nice to actually have a team where we don't need to do that for once. And I think that motivates at least me. Obviously, you can also kind of rest maybe sometimes because, oh, you already have the foundation. But I think we can kind of, for once, ease into things a little bit more instead of having these. Like we actually have some pretty long practice right now, but it doesn't need to be as crazy as it usually is, and you skimp out on certain things, and you can kind of like, I think going forward in the season, the fact that we start out a bit more mellow maybe, and we can add things slowly, is going to help us.
Do you think that's
go Strago.
Do you think that's also going to help with scheduling? I mean, I was just looking at your schedule, and you kind of have quite a lot of tournaments. I don't know how you're going to deal with the, like, obviously the Blast fall season with the showdown and qualifiers for that or whatever. But if that gets added in, there's quite a lot that could happen for you guys. And I think you're doing pretty well on the leaderboard. So potentially, like for the world final, you could even have that on top if you make it there.
Yep,
so yeah, we'll see if that happens. But obviously, it could be very difficult to manage this, so not having to have like so much even work in the background, does that help with the busy schedule?
It should help, but then on the other hand, it's like we have the foundation, but we do need to create a lot of improvements in this short time before the tournaments begin, because then when the tournaments are going on, then you have less and less time. So sure, you can do something there at the tournaments, between the tournaments, but yeah, it's gonna be hopefully also all the way up until the end. It's gonna be busy for us, so we are doing good and getting into the tournaments. But yeah, it's gonna be busy, so we do need to do a lot of still like the improvements here at the start, like at the boot camp here, and then when we go home and before Cologne, which is the first tournament.
Okay.
How are you guys feeling about all the changes? Obviously, as you said, like you're one of the few teams that didn't change, and for some teams that means like they see it as an advantage potentially. That okay, like we have the base, everybody else has to catch up now. Do you guys feel like this is the time that you really should get started and go for a lot of deep runs, or how are you feeling about the current state of the scene and where you're in it?
I actually wouldn't want to like take a lot of pressure on the results, and this is something we also talked a bit about with the team, that we need to focus more on ourselves, not so much about all the other team doing these roster moves, and then that we should be maybe in theory in a better place than they are and more ready for everything, and then doing good results because of that. But in the end, we do need to still show it, and that's gonna mean that every day in practice we do need to be focused on the actual practice and keep making these improvements instead of thinking about we'll just go into events, we are more ready and we will just smash everyone who did changes or whatever. But yeah, I mean, not so much result focused, I would say,
It's
for us,
hard,
at
right? You
least
go
for
straight into
now.
Cologne, though, don't you? Isn't that the first officials you play will be Cologne?
Yeah, it will be.
So that's like, this is what I was going to ask the question. Do you think it's a pro or a con that you aren't playing in the Blast groups, right? Like, do you think that's a pro or a con to the start of your season? Because some other teams get that soft entry where the stakes are really low, but they get officials in.
I mean, obviously, for our position as a team going forward into the season, it's terrible that we're not part of the franchise league. But if you look at it from like, we obviously get an easier start, so the chance of potentially facing burnout early in the season is obviously a little bit lower. But getting some reps in is pretty good, and also it's a no pressure tournament in the sense that the Blast group stage, because like there's so many bad teams that the good teams will eventually should go through anyway. So I would say that we would probably have preferred to play it, but we aren't, so that's it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's like at the moment, like as I mentioned, there is some Counter-Strike going on at the moment, but it's people trying to qualify for G8. You guys are already qualified for that, right? So you don't need to get stuck into that stuff right there. Do you want to pivot, Striker, to your next little segment here to do with the scouting and that type of stuff?
We can do that, just the transition into kind of you guys working together again as more like, because of those changes that you were talking about. Obviously, you were the ones who brought in, I mean, from the start when you guys formed the international roster, it was kind of a lot of pieces that weren't necessarily so much proven. Like Hades, Diha was there from the beginning, right, as well. And then as it went on, you had Spinks, who obviously you played with before as well, but wasn't a particularly proven piece. Since then, you've continued that path. Sunpire's obviously again had some already tournaments behind him, but you keep adding these pieces, that would be seen as kind of like budget picks, like not going for the big players, not going for the big salaries, but you just always find somebody like kind of like a diamond in the rough, that you guys can use, or somebody else already tried to prove a little bit, like with Endpoint, and some of those players that came through there. Just tell me about how this process works, even between you guys, when you have to scout for new players. How do you guys do it?
I think the thing is that well, all the time you are following the scene, following like players, what you hear from different players, how they're doing in different teams, and then like having this kind of idea who's good at what roles and all this. So you sort of have a picture. So it's not gonna be that when we know we need to do a change, then we instantly need to go into it without anything maybe in our mind. It's just normal to follow the scene, I would say, like that. But then maybe the simple thing is that you would look first at the stats in a way, just to get an idea, and then you would think about the roles, right? So who's performing in his role, and then there's gonna be different aspects, like what have you heard from him? Is he gonna be a aggressive player, passive player, and what do you actually need? And then trying to match what you need with what you get, and like what you want, and then doing it like that. And obviously there is, it's not only us two, for example, even though we do have a lot of say, but there is the organization behind us, ENCE, doing good job, and other players also helping like with everything.
Yeah,
Matt,
okay.
I was just gonna go. I imagine like we're looking at the players that you guys have picked up. It's not like we're going super deep, right? Like you think about like some players coming from Movistar Riders after they had a good performance and stuff, and then you mentioned as well their striker, the whole Spinks situation, contact Snappi, right? We already know that link and the faith they have in the player there. But I think when we look at this, I imagine for a team like Sprout, it's completely different. But you say you're following the scene and stuff in that regard. So like, are we talking about like whenever there's just a match of CS on, you just whacking it on, or you know the thread pops up and some kid dropped 30, and you're like, oh, this is interesting. You know, let's investigate. Like what's popping off the page to get like saw's attention? You know, if somebody wanted to get their themselves in front of your eyes, what would they need to do?
It's not maybe like that where you watch every match of CS. Of course, you try to watch as much as you can, but still, of course, focus on your own team. But it's hard to say. But it's the small things that might catch your eye every now and then, here and there. It's hard to explain actually, like in that way, because it's not like I'm watching every team play and then trying to figure out who is actually really good and in what. But it's kind of the small things, and there's actually a lot of analysis going on nowadays in CS and people doing different kind of work, which helps it. So maybe you're not even watching some players, but you get the idea. And then when you see a match here and there, then okay, this was maybe truthful. So it's not like you download demos of different players during our own season and go through and watch them. That's maybe more when you actually need a player, that you go so much into detail that you start watching the demos and seeing how they actually play all kind of situations.
Sure.
Yeah, but some of it is also coming from like just basically playing with players. Obviously, pros plays with each other, right? And both Spinks and Nerds was kind of noticed in FPL and not in teams, right? Because I remember when we had Spinks and Nerds came into FPL. This is before Endpoint. I said he's actually really good, this guy. But this is obviously far back. But as Saw say, there's a lot of like players that get on your radar, but then when you actually have like 3 or 4 players that you have to pick from, this is when you actually do the hardcore analysis. Like when you have narrowed down 3-4 names, then that's when you actually start watching the demos, hearing past teammates and people who played with them. How are they as people? Like what is their potential flaws and all of this? So obviously it's as easy to say, I don't think anyone sit and watch every single tier 2, tier 3 game. That's not how you find those players.
Yeah.
I like
Cool.
the Sprout comparison that you used. I feel like I don't want to like talk too much about like budgets behind the scenes, because I don't have the exact knowledge of everything about every organization. But it seems like both Sprout and you are in kind of a similar position in terms of, you know, always going for more like unproven players, or like trying players that have like gone through like an endpoint or something, like a sub top 30 team, or like a team on the fringe of that, and they just, you know, obviously it's going to be a cheap budget, a cheap buyout, you know, so you can get those players fairly easily. You don't need so much money to do that, right? And you guys have gone through a similar process in that, you know, going for some of the same like types of pieces, or at least like in terms of experience and stuff like that. But obviously, you know, your level of success is completely somewhere else. Sprout have had certain like periods where they looked like, you know, maybe one change down the line they could be a competitive roster, you know, but they never really hit it off the same way as you do. And
You look at
this
the issue
counts.
in Sprout, though, right? Was the leadership.
I
Striker.
mean, I was going to get to, what do you think sets you guys apart, both from that perspective? I mean, the leadership and just, you know, being able to scout the right players, you know, like a lot of the time you'll just see a guy with good stats, you know, but that doesn't necessarily tell the full story. And so what do you think just makes you better at this job than pretty much anybody else? I mean, like MOUZ is maybe the only other organization that could be comparable in that.
I think one thing at the start especially was that when we started the international project was that we were given a lot of time, and also we didn't instantly jump into big tournaments or anything. So we did need to grind ourselves like our way back up, and we did start from zero actually, because well, the players hadn't played together. So it started as simple as going through spot names and all that. So, but giving it time, it helped us a lot. And then, of course, having the EPL partnership was one thing. So we did have like that event, like big event we can attend, and we know we have it for sure. So that helped us a lot. And then slowly building the system, which I think is maybe the next thing is, I do think we have a good system to bring in players too, so we can fit them in and then create good things for them also.
So how much of like a balance of this do you think is the leadership and the right players that you find, to go along with that,
The combo, I think the player has to be able to fulfill his duties, but at the same time, I think we never bring a player to put him in a poor role. And I think that's the mistake a lot of teams are doing. They're like scouting a player based on numbers, and then they put him in a lot of situations he's not usually in, or they put him in some poor spots because someone else is like want to play it. But I think in general we have been good at scouting the players, and if we're going to do changes to them, we will give them better roles, not worse.
Okay. That's an interesting way. Yeah, well, I guess you do see that happen, right? Like people come in. I remember how it was in the old days as well. Like when you had like newer guys come in the team. I was just talking to JKS about this the other day. Like you come in the team, you give the new kid a couple of the shit spots. Like whereas today's Counter-Strike, the way you're thinking about it, right? You're trying to optimize the amount that you're getting out of these players, and you're trying to set them up to get more out of their skill set, as opposed to going, yeah, mate, you learn the hard graph like everybody else. There used to be a bit of hazy back in the day. You were a younger player, you had to learn a few of the shitter spots, right? You didn't get all your spots. You lost out the hierarchy. I think those days are gone by the smile on Snappi's face here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he'd be playing all the star roles, mate.
Yeah, those days are over, sadly.
Yeah, and then someone in chat just fucking owned me. Is that why my rating was so low? Yeah. Fucking hell, just like a nice little uppercut right there. Okay, so I wanted to. There was a question. Where was it? It was fucking these things dangle in front of my brain. Then we get going, and then I lose it. I should write this shit down. Striker, did you want to pivot into the next little?
I mean,
point
we already.
Here?
Yeah, I mean, we already kind of touched on it earlier, right? Because, like as you said, like you guys came off of a good end to the last season. Obviously, you don't see a reason to change. To make changes, but still, this seems like a good time, and you can see that by just how the sheer volume of changes that are happening. Just because of the major being quite far away, teams have a lot of time. Even if they make the wrong choice at this point, they still have a few months to realize that, maybe bring in a different piece, and then ramp up to the major. Still have a couple of months for that, before they have to qualify or even play whatever RMRs, whatever they're qualified for at that point. So that's why we see a lot of the changes. But then, did you ever feel like, okay, maybe there's a chance that we could do something, or was it just off the table from the get-go that you were satisfied with what you had?
I guess the thing always is that anything could happen. Like you can never know for sure. And I think, like Marco said before, that if there would be some insane offers to our players, sure, like they might just decide to leave, or maybe if actually something happened in the team. Well, that was the thing for us, that nothing happened so bad that we did think we would need changes, and there maybe wouldn't be any opportunities to make any reasonable changes or anything like that. So in that sense, it wasn't scary. But then, yeah, like from the other side, anything could happen. And in that way, you do need to think about it.
Okay, I see that angle. Now I've thought of I remember what I wanted to ask.
Okay, go ahead.
So this was much earlier. I mentioned CS2, and I think I know what the answer to this is going to be. It's just win everything, right? But this year is kind of weird because the way it's set up with no second major in the year, it's difficult to have like a short-term goal, because you go straight into Cologne, which is the biggest event it's the biggest event, and then I'd say Copenhagen is probably the next after that, right? In terms of stadium events that we know the people who are going to turn out. But there's a lot of events.
Game is 2, no?
Game is 8.
Game
is 8,
right?
Yeah.
But maybe in terms of
no, but also in terms of talent, it's just 10 times better than last. No,
you mean the players and stuff?
I mean,
like
teams
the tournament is just a
16
team tournament with all the best teams in the world.
The quality of the game,
quality of the event is going to be way higher, right?
Yeah, it's just that Copenhagen has the arena. That's all.
Yeah, I don't give a.
Yeah. Well, now fair enough.
That's fair. I mean, if you look at
better teams, arena.
Okay.
Yeah, it's harder to win, right? There's a milli on the line. There's that. You guys wouldn't have sucked.
Biased, so.
Yeah, hey mate, when you're coming out and you're doing it on the major and there's nothing they can do about it, that's baller as shit. That's like Snappi coming out and just flopping his dick on the table and saying, "Get fucked." That was something spicy.
I also like how you did just do that on the official broadcast, that you did like an interview with us and you said the exact same thing there, and then you did an interview with somebody else and you said the exact same thing for the third time.
No, but someone has to push it. Like, so there is a potential change, right?
Yeah.
And I still don't know why they didn't do it, because like obviously I think they would have a better product if there was better teams.
Right, but I mean, there are some deals in place probably that are preventing them from doing
I
that at this
realize
point,
that,
right?
but I still think that. Well, maybe, but for 4 years, maybe
We're gonna have
those
Snappi
are
on the
4 years
show.
long.
We're gonna have Snappi on the show every week. My question was going to be, before I got lost in the weeds here, was what do you set as the goals for the second half of the year? I guess it's just to win more, right? Because this is it. The calendar is kind of, it feels like it's all over the shop. The most prestigious event is your first event, and that's kind of the fact that this has been pushed till after the player break. So everything seems kind of fucked. So what do you guys talk about? Yeah, let's just win everything. Or you're peaking for something. You're peaking for the next major. You're waiting for CS2. Like, I don't know. Like, everything to me, if I was in your position, it seems so hard to plan. You don't know what comes next.
I think what Asa said was the correct thing, that it's more a focus on ourselves and the process, like being ready for each game, making sure that we can look ourselves in the eye after each game and say, okay, we did maybe not everything we could every time, but we at least gave 90% of what we had in us every single time. If we can look ourselves in the eye and say that, it's better than, like, if we, let's say we would go out and we would lose a tough game to Vitality or Heroic, or let's say Cloud9 with a new good roster, or just in general just have a off game. It's okay, but the issue is if you don't give what you have, right?
Okay, I'm going to ask a hot question then, because like with all of this, like the teams who are making new roster changes and stuff, they're probably going, okay, let's see how things go, and we'll plan for like the next major or CS2 and see how things unravel, and we'll reevaluate once CS2 comes out and stuff. There's probably a whole bunch of different plans, but like from the vibe I'm getting here, it's okay. So we have a recipe that works. We just won an event, right? We know that we can play good Counter-Strike. And then saw before you're saying, yeah, we need to still add some things and build a couple of new things on. But if you play your best Counter-Strike, right? Do you two feel like ENCE can be the best Counter-Strike team in the world? Like, is that because that's the impression I'm getting of the way, like, we need to focus on us and do this. That's kind of what I'm getting. If like you guys can maximize ENCE, you can be the best team in the world. Is that how you feel?
I do think so, because we do still have some like potential left. We did the change with Nurse like not so long ago.
Sure.
There's still something there. Obviously, Nurse has a lot of individual potential still as well. And for also the rest of our players, I feel like it's the same kind of thing, where there is a lot of potential to fill up, and we can get a lot more from that side. And then on the other hand, yeah, like we do have maybe not the perfect recipe, but a good recipe, and we can do some improvements there, where we will actually understand more on what's working good for us, and then we are preparing for some extra stuff. So, well, basically, if there's gonna be some meta shifts, whatever, we do have small stuff prepared, and we have things, so to say, in reserve. Not that that would be like a main focus, but that's kind
You're
of a
not caught
thing
off
we
guard.
can.
You're never out
Yeah,
of
yeah,
gas. You're never chasing your
yeah.
tail. Okay. I see that. Yeah. Okay. So there's enough arsenal, because I think that one of the conversations at the moment is people are going to say Heroic and Vitality are like the two best teams in the world right now, right? But like in terms of who's going to win consistent trophies, I don't think we live in a world like that right now. It's like anybody out of the big names could go into an event, and if they're sitting on a heater, they can win. Like if you just have your players who are on form and everything's working and repeating these systems and all these regiments and new stuff you guys put in place, whoever's doing that best at that event can win that event. Is that cool, or is that like kind of lame? I think it's cool. Anyone can win.
I think it's both. I think it's cool if someone is dominating, but I also think it's cool if there's a lot of teams who can potentially win. I don't think either is bad. It's just sometimes there is a team who starts dominating, like NAVI did. With the Boombla simple lineup, or the Astralis. Sometimes there is just a team who, for a period of time, is way better. I also think that's pretty cool. So I don't think either is bad.
Do you think there's stylistic Counter-Strike, like Counter-Strike maths in play at the moment? Like ENCE can beat this team, but they can't beat this team that this team can beat. Like, do you think there's like weird matchups like that could be determined by brackets and stuff, and how events are going to go now as we're in this murky water of top teams?
I think for sure it can happen like that a bit. And yeah, with the roster changes and everything, like you don't really know what you're gonna get when you play the first matches. And maybe that's a weird thing what you said before about like how would you like talk about the season, like what's the important events. And we have Cologne instantly for us, the first event, and there's not gonna be a lot of data about other teams. It can be a bit random, messy, whatever, but that's also another point why we want to focus more on us ourselves and just be ready ourselves as much as we can. But yeah, for sure, like the matchups can be weird, and I think there has been a lot of times there has been these matchups that some teams are just good against other teams, and then it depends on the bracket a bit who's going far in the events.
In that sense, I mean, with all these changes, right? And I mean, this is obviously something you have to think about. I mean, how do you see the balance of like, let's say, having strong fundamentals and being prepared for the right opponent? You know, obviously you can't do the latter much these days, and you just don't know what kind of playstyle they're going to come out with. You know, let's say you're going to play Navi. I mean, you're going to see them play now, and you're going to get a bit of an idea at least. But let's say you play like one of these new teams like early on in Cologne, you know, and do you think it's possible for you to be prepared well enough on your own fundamentals to be able to face a lot of these new teams and be able to be better than them? Or do you think CS has gotten to a point where you have to be like, you know, the prep for specific matchups, you know, has gotten so heavy, especially in recent times, you know, where that's too important, you know, for a team to be dominant when so many changes are happening?
The fundamentals are important for sure, and they should you should have strong enough fundamentals so they can carry you through like hard matches. And for some tournaments like the majors, the schedule for the best of ones and all this is so that you can't actually prepare a lot for the next matchup. So then it's gonna be your own fundamentals there. And yeah, now with the roster changes, it's gonna be mix when we play a new team where we need to trust our own fundamentals, and they need to, or they can at least prepare for us more, but they won't have as strong fundamentals then. And then it's gonna be a clash if they go too much out of their own comfort zone at that point early on into the team. Is it too much for them to try to focus on like countering us? Should they also focus on their fundamentals? And it's gonna be weird things maybe happening, but I'm looking forward to it. And what we are doing now is actually like strengthening our fundamentals, so we will be ready for these matchups.
Kind of just adding, I think that's the thing. If you add more like theory of decision making in certain scenarios, so you're almost ironclad, like because there's so many moves that are available now, right? That you see that teams make, and if you know how to react to that move instantly, like you make sure you get that extinguished down, and you see this smoke, and you know what it means, right? Like it. I feel like Counter-Strike now is essentially making sure that everybody in your team understands this, so they can react independently. Like it's not counter-stratting. It's just like, this is the most optimal thing to do in this moment, right? There feels like there's a lot of that. Like that's how people like cut corners. Well, not cut corners. It's optimal decision making, right? But that's why also when you have someone who comes in with a fucking crowbar and just rushes topside on nuke every round like Snappi a couple of years ago, it kind of fucks everything up, right? But I do you like the part of the game that got so heavy with the counter strat because of just partner team, partner team, partner team? Because it did feel for a while there, it was just about like, you couldn't play the same position as a player in 2 back-to-back maps because you just get like triple naded if you gave away too many tendencies and stuff, right? It felt like that was just such a huge part of it. I don't know if that's because it's closed or not, but
I mean, I think it's good that I don't think this is only because of partner leagues. I think in general, there's just like you also, if you try to hard counter someone, you also risk, as Eto said, going off your own fundamentals, and then suddenly you might be playing in a way where you're not even comfortable yourself. Also, if you're like trying to do these triple nade stacks, I think most players on a high level at this point are pretty good at switching up their positions. Once in a while, me and Eto sit and look at a team, and then we're like, okay, this guy really likes this position, and we try to abuse it, and we will abuse it. But most players at a high level at these days are pretty good at switching it up or being unpredictable. Okay, maybe, you know, he's still there 40% of the time, but is that really enough to do a hard count on it?
sure.
You know, so I would say it's hard. I don't think it's part, because also tier 2 teams are playing all the time, and I think they have way less chance of actually switching up when they sit and play online all the time. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's an interesting perspective. I like that. All right. Do we want to do Skinionaire now? Do the quiz now, and then we can start getting a bit broader with the recent news, and we can explore sAw and Snappi's thoughts on all these roster changes and what we're going to think about Blast. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, cool. Are you ready for Skinionaire, Mr. Dimitri? I kind of threw him under the bus. Oh, he's fucking ready. Dimitri, this is the difference between Dimitri and Lucas. He might not give me a count, but he's fucking listening. Whereas Lucas, no, he could be doing anything, mate. He could be trying to solve world peace for all we know. But regardless, let's get this thing underway. Who wants to be a Skinionaire brought to you by BitSkins? It's 5 multiple choice questions. The two of you can work together. I won't give you a lifeline. Striker did the questions, and the two of you can bounce off of one another. If you get
I would
all
also
five,
say it's fairly easy this time. But I don't want to put too much pressure on the guys, but it is. Just one little note. The last question is, I'm trying to remember for which one, but just for one of you, it's going to be obvious.
okay, all right, we'll see. We'll work it out as we go here. Now, I need the people at home, if you want to be in the raffle here to win the skin that sAw and Snappi are going to be fighting for. Type BitSkins in chat. You don't have to do it once, but if you want to spam it, that's great. More interactions and more numbers that we can take to BitSkins. I'm not involved with the sponsors or anything like that, but I'm sure someone in some department would love that. Anyway, let's get it underway. You ready for question number 1, lads?
Yeah.
Yep.
But wait, do we go into the link here?
You can do, or I can
You
do
can,
it for
or
you.
you can
It's either
click it.
way.
It's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can't see it properly, then it's good to go into the
Okay,
link.
All right. Question number 1. How many of the 12 Blast teams have changed lineups over the break? 9, 6, or 10?
9 or 10, right? Because the only
Yeah.
teams that didn't change was Heroic, Vitality, and G2. So it must be 9, I guess. But wait, isn't it 9? Or was there a fourth team that? No, it's 9, right?
Big maths. Do you want to lock in A, Snappi? You feel pretty confident here.
But do you say it should be 9,
Yeah,
right?
lock it.
Lock it in A9. And the correct answer is ding, 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 A9. All right, beautiful stuff. Out the gates here with a hot one.
You said
all right.
Vitality instead of FaZe, but you got there.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
we know what
Sorry,
you meant.
my
Yes,
bad, my
I
bad, my
figured
bad.
you meant FaZe.
Yeah.
They may as well not imagine. You know, who knows? We'll talk about that soon. All right, question number 2. Before Dallas 2023, where did ENCE win their only other big event as an org? Was it Epicenter 2019, DreamHack Masters Dallas 2019, or Blast Pro Series Madrid 2019?
The Madrid one, right?
Yep. It is
Okay.
Madrid. Yeah.
Yeah, locking it in. All right, we'll lock in C, Blast Pro Series Madrid 2019. The correct answer is Blast Pro Series Madrid 2019. That's where they ended Astralis' nuke streak, I believe, right? That was the event?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, okay. That was when it was still all the Finns. All right, question number 3. Who did ENCE beat to make it to the Katowice 2019 major final? Was it Fnatic, NAVI, or NIP?
6-7, simple one, right?
Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me as well.
So I guess it has to be Navi.
All right, we're going to be locking in B NAVI.
That's what everybody remembers that for, man.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it's too hard to.
It's just chewing gum.
Dude,
Yeah, there is.
it's for me. It's like I just think about it like it's the peak that didn't need to be, as well, right? Like Simple didn't need to take that
But
fight
it's
at all.
simple.
I know it is. But you think about like the.
But how many times have you fought this and then he kills
Yeah,
you
you're
in
right.
a scenario where
You're right.
Yeah.
you know
I should never question.
And
you
he
take
was
the
a
good
bit
with
shaky,
you
you
take
know?
the good with the bad sometimes.
And he
Fair
missed. He
enough.
just missed. You know, like if he
Yeah,
just
yeah.
hits, like it was fine.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 4. Which of the following players is not an ENCE alum? Is it Mr. Jimpphat, Mr. Uhob, or Mr. Jimpphat? Oh dear.
I suppose it's Jimpphat though.
Well, sAw should be the
Yeah.
one to smash this, shouldn't he?
It is,
He's
it
just
is.
panicking now. He's like, "Fuck, Finnish Counter-Strike. I haven't worried about this in years. Fucking hell, I don't even know
Yeah.
who's in Havu these days."
Yeah, Juha was in ENCE, so was Jimpphat, so
Mr. Jimpphat.
yep, we can
Oh.
lock that.
We're gonna be looking in and see Sergey's little brother. I watched him play in the matches yesterday, and they got eliminated by a
He's
couple of
good.
Norwegians. Yeah, he was doing all right. He had no issues. They still had a couple of players who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, but that's all right. They gave it a go. All right, question number 5. From where else does sAw have coaching experience?
This is
Game.com,
for
Havu,
Snappi.
or SJ? Snappi, this is up to you.
How?
I'm waiting to see if there's any. Okay, no facial expressions coming through. We're going to lock in B, Havu.
I'm not sure, but I think so.
All right, and the
Nice.
correct answer is B,
That was
Havu.
his last team. I figured that where he maybe got the idea.
Yeah.
But he wasn't actually
No.
coaching there when he left. That was the funny part. It was like 2 months or something you were coaching that.
Yeah, it was a short time. And then I played for a while after that, but yeah.
And that's the
They
thing. When
needed
you
it
went
to
to coach,
scores.
when you went to coach ENCE, it was from being a player, right?
Yeah, it was.
Damn, see, that's back when I used to actually read the articles. These days, back then, I used to actually get into the thick
No,
of
it's
them.
just headlines, right?
Yeah, right. These days, I don't have time anymore. You know, we're all right. We got the winner of our BitSkins. Who wants to be a Skinionaire? It is Schmiley. That is SCHMI. I think it's LLEY. Our people will reach out to your people. We'll get you the skin sorted. That's 5 from 5. Correct here from the ENCE lads. Absolutely bloody smashed it. And we're going to keep, moving forward with the show. We're going to go into the recent news, and then I guess we'll go into the ad break at some point after that. So we could do the ad break in about 15, 20 minutes now. All good. So we'll keep it going. Dimitri, roll the bumper. Let's get into the recent news, shall we? All right, we're back, and maybe you heard us there, maybe you didn't. Who knows? It's a mystery. We'll finally find out after the episode's come to its conclusion. All right, we're going to get into the recent news. A few more roster changes have come in since last week. We'll probably talk about a lot of the roster changes with sAw and Snappi once we talk about Blast. That's got a lot of them in there, a lot of the big ones especially. But MOUZ finalized their roster. They have Jimpphat coming in. There was that rumor about Degster potentially joining the team to be the AWPer, but that didn't come to any fruition. So they've kept 3 of the MOUZ team that existed before. Torji on the AWP, Frozen, and of course Exertion. And then they brought back Shui, obviously brought him over from Gamer Legion, and Jimpphat has been promoted from the Academy team. And Snappi, just before we through to that, you said he's good. So take the floor, my friend. He how good?
I mean, I think there's different opinions in our team about how good.
Oh, really?
But he is good for sure. But I think it's a really good addition. I think obviously it's a very young team, and it's a team who will probably need. They should, in theory, get better over time. But I think he's a solid piece, and it made sense to move him up. I think Ito maybe knows even more about him than me. But he was. Well, how much can we say about this?
Oh,
It's
About what?
He was being looked into, you wanted to say? Or?
we have actually looked into him a little bit, I guess, right?
I guess he's been Finnish and stuff, right? It's good for the org to look for Finnish players, and it's Sergey's little brother.
Yeah, but he's good. I guess we can say a decent MOUZ anyway. But we were obviously looking into him when we brought in Nerds. Nerds was the first priority, but Jimpphat was high.
Okay.
Wow,
So
that's high praise.
Yeah, especially when you consider like what Nerds has brought to the team, right?
What is he, 16?
He's 16
Something
now.
crazy like that now, right?
He's 16 now.
Yeah.
Like he's 16. Boys, imagine.
Yeah.
Think back when we were fucking 16.
I think Ito
Holy
looked a little bit more into him than me. But obviously he's been playing super good, and he's 16. He has a lot of upside, and he will get better with time for sure.
Now, I don't want to be a bit of a tattletale here. That's not my intent. But I was doing some stuff with Harry and Hugo today. We were recording some stuff, and we got talking a little bit, and we were talking about the MOUZ roster. And he said that there was like a podcast that Torji did. I don't know if you guys read.
We saw it as well. I didn't get somebody Hungarian to actually translate it, but I did. I know what you're about to say.
Well, so
I read it on Reddit if it's that interview.
Yeah, I think so, right? I think and that's the one that Hugo was referencing. Now, if there's people in chat who maybe read all of this, or anyone who's Hungarian or can assist us with any of this, right? But essentially what Hugo was saying, there was some stuff that Torji was saying, like that he got made a very supportive AWPer by Dexter in the team, and that like where it was when he was with Shui, he was like enabled a lot more and stuff. And if people could confirm or deny that, that's what Hugo was saying. It's like, it's kind of like, that's big talk, right? Like if now Shui's back on the roster, Torji's still there, and he still doesn't perform with the AWP, like he's removed anything he can say, right? So like, if that is the case, no, I should probably make sure it is before I'm sitting here saying this. And we'll pass the buck to Hugo, shall we? What do we feel about that? Like, do we think that Torji? Because for me, Torji's the weakest piece in this team now.
I think that's very obvious. Yeah.
Well, it can't be obviously that black and white that it's in-game leader's fault that the AWPer is not performing.
Okay.
It
Can
can
we
have
explore that a bit, Saw?
Yeah,
Let's
I mean,
explore
it
that.
can have an influence. Like, why not? Because it can depend on how your team is gonna play, what is the AWP gonna do, and what options do you have, and how many chances you will get possibly, and all that. But yeah, in the end, like, if well, it depends now. We will see, I guess, in the future if it's something is gonna change, like playstyle wise. Will Torsi be maybe more aggressive, taking chances? But on the other hand, I find it hard to see that the in-game leader and the coach would be limiting their AWPer so much that you can't perform, for example. I'm not sure if it was said in the interview exactly like that. I don't know, but yeah, it's not that black and
Well,
white at least.
someone in chat has said he wants to be more aggressive and more micromanaged by Shui too.
Yeah, but I think
So-
I think this is a bit of a. I'll just say my honest opinion. I think it's a bit of a weak excuse if that's really the case, because this was also what people were saying about our team, that the AWP couldn't perform in this system, and now sandBy has just won an MVP at Dallas, right? So I think it's a lot of this is often the AWP himself that does it. Like, as to say, I don't think there's a lot of coaches and in-game leaders who will ever tell their AWP on CT to not move around the map in this meta. And if they do, that's obviously an issue. And on T side, obviously, you need to be within certain parts of a system, but at the same time, if an AWP want to go for peaks, you kind of build the system around it so it's possible. I would say that the fact that an in-game leader needs to micromanage his AWP is the problem itself.
Okay, so you think the AWPer is the one that you want to be suggesting to help bring
Yeah, that
things to
doesn't
the
mean
in-game
like
leader?
sometimes if I see sandBy as a spawn, or like if I know, like say we play Ancient and I see something that happens towards the B area and I know that he can make a peek, I will obviously tell him you should come and do this peek, or you should try to do this. But at the end of the day, the AWPer is his own, like he is his own player, and I think everyone understands what the AWP needs to do, and most of the responsibility is on the AWPer himself, I would say.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, because like also the in-game leader will need to focus on himself. And then on the other hand, if the AWPer is going for some plays, he's probably then confident with those plays because he's calling them himself.
Mm.
So that can also help.
Yeah,
I mean
okay.
that's especially with like AWPer peaks, right? Like if you're gonna like peek a corner, like you kind of have to be confident to do that, especially like if it's whatever, like spawn based, let's say.
But that's pretty much like that's the same like thing you want from your AWPer over the last 10 years, right? Like what would happen was an AWPer would say, I have this one, I'm going for this pick, and then I'd have to reorganize whatever I wanted to do around that, right? And then you'd see what happens if they get the kill.
But I mean,
great.
that
If
still
they don't-
happens today, obviously, just because the AWP is such a strong weapon that you can get away with doing that a lot.
That's the
Yep.
conversation with Cloud9 when they won that major, though, right? I remember talking to Stewie, and he was like, "Yeah, Scooter woke up and decided that he wanted to, call where he was going for fights. It really is, it enables a lot of options, especially if your AWP is hitting those shots, and then you can rely on it. It's kind of nice, but it doesn't happen very often, and that's probably why Torji ended up in more supportive passive things, because they couldn't rely on him producing that consistently enough, right? That's where you fall back into like your B, your C, your D, your games, right? Where you're contributing in different ways, but.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's also impossible for us to sit and say what exactly happened. Maybe he was limited and told to stand somewhere, but then obviously it's an issue. But I just doubt that someone would tell the AWPer to just stand somewhere
You're
all
kind
the
of
time.
neutering them at that point, right?
Of
You're
course, there's
removing
certain
either
like
impacts.
certain defaults are built up, so you want your AWP to be in a certain place and hold an area. But that's because you try to pressure the map so that people walk into that area.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. I like this discussion, right? We're actually we're peeling back the curtain a little bit. It's good.
I mean,
right?
there's obviously history between three of them, right? With Torji, Suhi, and Zershin from the academy team, that won whatever 3-4 consecutive titles in the academy league. So there's definitely some potential where Torji just gets whatever it is that caused his confidence, to tank or his playstyle to change. There's obviously going to be a different system in place that he was comfortable with once, and there's a lot of familiarity in the team now. So who knows, maybe Torji does get that confidence back, and we will see some of the same flashes that we saw from him earlier.
Yeah, but if he gets confidence, also he doesn't need to be micromanaged most likely, because that's kind of like, I don't think you should micromanage the AWPer every round.
I think one of the things as well with this is fuck, I was reading the next thing about Sprout. Man, my memory.
You're the same as me, man. Like my short-term memory fucking sucks.
I just went and looked to see Sprout was the next team we were talking about. I had this anyway. It couldn't have been that banger of a point. Regardless, we've spoken about this. They have Jimpphat, they have Shui in game leading. They've kept the 3. They've got Cyclone coaching. Anything else anyone wants to say about MOUZ? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I mean, they are just the team that will bank on these young pieces and kind of like blessed proven pieces. As I said before, they're pretty much the only other organization along with ENCE that have been capable of doing this pretty consistently and staying competitive with like pieces that were completely unproven. I mean, just look at the team now. Frozen is the senior guy on that team, and he's 2020.
Yeah, we have to keep that
He's-
story.
he's
We always
20.
have to keep that story.
That
man.
is,
We need a new
but that
story
is just so
over there.
ridiculous, you know, just because of they literally now have 3 out of the 5 of the, and that's after JDC left. So, you know, if JDC stayed and Jimpphat wasn't promoted, that would literally be 4 out of the 5 MOUZ and XD guys from 2 years ago.
Yeah, right. And then,
So
yeah.
that's just funny to me that they actually did that over time, you know.
Yeah, well, not quite complete. So the fairy tale's not there. Let's jump into Sprout, another team that we've mentioned here this evening. Now they announced their main roster. Zyphon's still there. Alpha, they had him play a couple of games, so we already knew he was on the team. But they added Wonderful. I remember you mentioned this before. Rouse is back. Rouse is another one of these really interesting cases, isn't he? And Spook, who there was a bit of controversy around. I think I saw, wasn't there something? There was some match fixing stuff.
Some
on
activations.
I wouldn't
want to put too much like emphasis on that because it's just one screenshot doesn't say anything. So I wouldn't want to like put too much focus on that. So unless somebody like digs up a little bit more about it, which tends to be quite hard with these cases, I wouldn't want to.
I just saw it popping off. Right? I just saw it on the HLTV on the forums and stuff, and there was a whole, you know, maybe I caught that few hour window where everyone was getting horny about that there. But Sprout also announced an academy roster as well, right? So I guess they put their scouting to good work. They were obviously looking for players here to pick up for this main team. They've gone, hey, look, we've seen a whole bunch of players that could be exciting, and maybe we can, you know, farm them. So I think that's curious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. I'm a bit sad for Wonderful because from what I heard, he turned down Falcons, who ended up getting MHL instead for that team. And so I think if you compare the two now, I think it's fairly obvious who has the bigger upside, at least for now.
Yeah.
And that being obviously Falcons. So I'm a bit sad for him that he didn't get a better offer because I think in spirit he showed a lot. But I mean, other than that, I mean, he's obviously the star of the team. Like he needs to really deliver on this team, and then the rest. There's a lot of question marks there, you know, that you don't know if they're going to perform. Like Spook is a guy that has played for like an academy team before and hasn't like had some insane stats, you know, for us to call him like the next upcoming star or things like that, you know. So there's a lot of question marks on this team, and I don't believe that this team will be able to match the same heights of the previous.
How does it go then, Snappi? You look at this roster. What do you go? You go, whatever. Yeah,
to be honest, there's a few of the players I don't really know.
Sure.
I think the Wonderful guy is a great addition. I think he's actually a really skilled player. I think if he gets some help, try like pushing himself to be more aggressive, I think he can be a solid star in the future. I didn't like the way he played so much in Spirit, but before that, I think he was really good. And I think it's just about someone pushing him potentially to be a bit more crazy and setting up the peaks for him, naming like on every map, constantly making different peaks that he can do, naming them so he can call them like easier without potentially having to micromanage everyone around him, right? So I think if he has someone that can help him with that, and I think he will have that here because Barry, my old teammate, is there as a coach, so hopefully he can help him. And I think he's the most solid pickup for them. I think he's a scoop. Rals is another guy I know. He's I think been back and forth between being an in-game leader. If he can do a good job, I think.
I mean, he's not the HL now. That's meant to be Alpha,
right?
Oh, he's not the in-game leader.
No, not this time.
I thought he was, but then I can't really speak much for the roster apart from Wonderful, to be honest, in that case, because I haven't seen them play, most of them, for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, kind of the fact that they got Rals, he's kind of like a backup, you know, for if Alpha doesn't really work out, maybe he doesn't prove himself. Obviously, he's a guy that barely played on the scene in general, like especially tier 1, any sort of tier 1 appearances, right? So there's a lot of like potential switch ups that could happen in the future, you know, if they found a better piece to add to the roster, or if one of those academy guys ends up proving himself, you know, there's a lot of potential switch ups that can happen in the future, I would say.
Look, we have to make an urgent announcement here on the show. We just have Jeffy Potato in the chat. He said he watched back the part of the Torji interview where he talks about his role in MOUZ and in NXT before. He said there was no shitting on Dexter or blaming anyone. He just said he had more supportive role in the team that he likes. He also blamed himself for maybe not being more forthcoming with his wishes and let that run slip.
Well,
So
but
this
then
is
it's kind of what we said, that it's his own responsibility, and he also blames himself for not taking that responsibility and going for the peaks that he needs to go for, obviously, right?
But I'm just trying
Or
to perpetuate
integrating
this.
them into. Yeah.
But
But
it's really bad hearsay that I've started here on the show, Snappi. I
Yeah.
did it through Hugo, and now I'm doing it through another random through chat that's not verified. So
Oh,
we're
no,
just
but obviously, if what this Jeffy potato guy is saying is true, I think it is kind of like what me and Nito think, that it's his own responsibility. Obviously, certain styles can limit him, or if someone really said to him, sit here and do nothing, then it's obviously their fault. But I guess he kind of has a pretty clear and good mind about what he needs to do going forward now with the new lineup.
Sure. Okay. All right. Do anyone want to? So you got anything you want to say about Sprout?
I think it was a pretty good take what you said, and maybe the thing was like, yeah, the old lineup was more interesting than the new one. It's not to say the new one can't do good, but I think that's just the case. And also what you said, like the comparison maybe between Falcons and Sprout, if Wonderful had that, I don't know, but yeah, that was also like Falcons for sure is more interesting, but they do have good players and it can be promising, so it's gonna be fun to see also.
Okay. We got the Brazilian Storm. Now, what is in the Brazilian Storm here, Striker? Are we a bit of
it's
lightning?
mainly-
Is it just rain?
It's Imperial and Fluxo mainly, who completed their rosters. There's a lot else happening on the Brazilian scene. I think there's Pain, who's still going to be making moves, and a bunch of these other teams. I think 0 Nation is going to be moving completely somewhere else. I don't even.
What
It's
happened to
kind of
poor
hard to
Pain,
keep up with
man?
everything.
Pain, one of the most
I don't know
probably
what
the
happened.
most promising team are the
Bro.
ones who are like pillaged, and it's like, what the fuck happened?
Like,
here?
first of all, I don't know what happened there. That not only that they ended up in a position where they only have 2 players, but they ended up with the 2 players who are the best and who I expected to get stolen by like one of these other teams. So
Yeah.
that is the crazy part to me. That's not like the rest of the Brazilian scene didn't really benefit from this, I would say.
It's kind of weird, right? So Imperial end up with Henny from MIBR, and they get Phelps. So Phelps is interesting, but this has to be Phelps' last crack at like being a top tier player, right? Because this was years ago that Phelps was like touted as meant to be like the second coming of Fur. Like,
I mean,
next
both Phelps
aggressive.
and Henny. I mean, that was the Immortals lineup that were in the final of Krakow.
True, with Zach, who's the coach over there. As
Oh yeah, there you go.
wait,
Wasn't
was
Bolts
it?
there
No,
too?
Phelps wasn't there. Was he? It was
Am
Bolts.
I crazy, or
yeah, I
was
don't.
Phelps not
Phelps
there?
wasn't there. It was Bolts, Henny,
Oh, it was Bolts
Lucas,
and Henny, I'm
FNX,
sorry. Yeah, you're
and Steel. Right, that was the
Bolts and
Immortals
Henny,
roster, yeah.
not Phelps and Henny.
Yeah, but then you've got Vinny, who's going to take over in-game leading, apparently. You got Joda, who's obviously going to continue to just stay aggressive for the team, I suppose. Bolts will do the more supportive stuff. Henny, Phelps, Vinny, Joda, that's the roster. I don't hate it. I don't begrudge it. It just is what it is. How do we feel about this team? So you look at this, you go, okay, well, do you feel it's worse than the old roster?
Yeah, to be honest, all of these changes, like, well, I'm not sure what to make of it. I do think like the Brazil scene has a lot of skill, like individual skill, and maybe this is a shuffle that one of these teams will actually suddenly click and start doing like some like surprising results or something. But that's maybe what I have to say, because like I'm not sure exactly like how
Nothing
things will
blows you
work
away,
out.
right? Nothing is like, wow, this is the super team. It's like, yeah, okay. Like, that's kind of what I'm like. Even with Fury, I'm like, yeah, all right, we'll see. I don't know. Am I misdiagnosing this here? Because Fluxo as well, you mentioned them, Striker. They have PKL, who was on the bench before. Remember? He
In
had to
pain,
take some time off. VSM, Lakalzi, a new boy, and Zevi. How did this stuff happen? Did these
To be
teams
fair, I
even
think
want these changes?
I
Like, what
think Zevi
happened?
was pretty good, apart from the major appearance, which
The
it seemed
pressure
like
got
was a
to
lot
him,
of
yeah.
pressure. Yeah. So I think Zevi is a really decent addition. I don't know what happened with PKL, but I mean, I guess he's coming back to in-game lead now. And the rest of the
Must
roster,
be,
I
yeah.
mean, it's just, I don't know, like all these Brazilian changes feel like nobody really benefited.
But did this pain team remove the players themselves?
They benched Hardzao. He's still on the bench. And then I guess it all started to disintegrate from there. So
I mean, they were looking into, they wanted Fallen originally. That didn't work out because he wanted to go to Fury instead, So I think it just turned out like this, where the other players probably also wanted to go somewhere else.
okay. Well, Yeah, that kind of just sucks. It just was a team that felt like it was going in
that's
the
what I'm
right
saying.
place.
Like
and it's
everybody,
just-
there was so much happening. Like basically, literally every single Brazilian team ended up making changes. But I don't see like okay, Furia. There's an argument for that to be an upgrade just because of criticism towards their style, right? And that and Fallen maybe helping revamp that. But everybody else, I feel like I don't know. I just don't see the upside in any of these teams. Like
No.
compared to their previous versions, I mean.
I'm just
because
like, we go
Pain
again.
was solid.
Right, we just we lose Pain and we see if any of these shuffles worked. That's essentially it.
Yeah. What do you guys think
So-
about Furia? I mean, is it
They're not-
interesting?
I
Not
kind
interesting?
of like the move to switch up their style. I think it can potentially be good. But as you say, like, wasn't the two of the best upcoming players the two players that are left in Pain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Skulls and Biguzera, but I mean, Biguzera was the guy who like started the game leading. I don't know how much. I said it before, I don't know how much he's actually a good in game leader or not. I mean, Pain started
Could it
doing
also
well
be
after that,
buyouts
but
then that made it so that they didn't get one of these guys?
I mean, it is possible. But like every buyout in Brazil seems crazy. So I don't know if
all very high for some reason.
theirs was any more crazy than that. It's hard to say. I don't know the numbers. I
It is
don't
just
think there was
weird.
so much reports.
Like, these two would have seemed like the pieces you wanted, right?
No, but I actually think the Fallen move can be pretty good. But maybe, well, I don't know. I think it's interesting that Fourier switches it up and tries a new in-game leader, not because Art was necessarily bad, but just because they probably need some new. Like, I guess they were in sort of a identity crisis with the fact that they were playing a very different style from any other team. And they probably needed kind of a new view of how they could also do things. So if they can kind of keep the best from that and add something else, I think that can be really good, because I think the three players that are staying are really, really good individually, both Uriard and Kesarado.
I want to ask this to either of you or both of you, maybe, because I was talking to Yanko about this the other day, and his opinion of it is he well, I don't want to speak for him, but I'll probably butcher this anyway. But essentially, what I took from what he was saying was like Art hanging around and Gary as well. Like they were the bosses before, right? The coach and the in-game leader. With the both of them still being there and Fallen coming in, like does this create like a weird power struggle? Are we still going to get remnants of the way that they approach the game? Do you think if they're willing to make this change, things must have been like mega die? Like, how do you look at this? The old in-game leader hanging around still, old coach too, but you bring in somebody like Fallen. What do you think of this type of a dynamic? Could there be issues?
I don't think you can make a straight like 180 and switch your whole style instantly, even with the changes. So some of it must still stay. But as far as I remember, they did say in some interviews, like at the end of the season also, that they tried some changes in the style.
Yes.
I didn't really watch too much like that, but I think they said something like that, and well, it didn't go too well, but yeah, like I guess they have open mind because of it at least. So they are trying something and doing changes. So
That's a good point. They already recognized the fact that they needed a change, right? Because I think that interview also came with the foreboding nature that, hey, we would make changes now if we could. Like the major's just around the corner. So we'll change style and we'll try something new, but it will have to do more in the future. That's kind of how that read at the time. I don't know if that's how that read for you, Striker, back when this was before the major. Right, they were talking about the fact they needed to change some stuff. So
it was just like kind of like they couldn't in that time because ramp up to the major. They didn't want to change too much, basically.
Yeah,
it
but
will all come down to how the mindset of those two are. Like if they are like their personality is what is going to determine whether they can whether it will work or not. In my opinion, a lot of it at least, because if they are not willing to kind of hand over the responsibility and constantly have to nag about small details, it's obviously not going to work. So it will be about like whether they can accept that they are no longer the leaders in a sense. Well, I guess Gary will still be a leader, but Art would have to kind of step down if Fallen is going to be the in-game leader. Because if you have a guy that constantly sits and want to do things a different way or constantly challenge it, or like, then it's going to be an issue. But if he's willing to just accept it, which will come down to his personality, I would guess, then it could easily work.
Okay, cool. Nice. We get a nice broad little look at it right there. All right. I guess we're done with the Brazilian stuff. Do you want to move on to the VoxPop? Then we'll do the ad, and then we'll get into talking about Blast. Okay, so the VoxPop striker, you've been responsible for everything this week, mate. I guess you've done this one quite topical. The fact that we do have sAw and Snappi, the coach and in-game leader combo from ENCE on the show. You've asked the people at home to give their opinion on the best coach in-game leader combo. Is this of all time?
I mean,
at the moment,
we just kind of left it to viewers. Some of them also like came up with new combos. So we have kind of like, let's say we have 3 answers like that we're going to showcase that are from all kinds of directions. Let's say one of them is very realistic. A couple of them are like potential, you know, and then one of them is, let's say, a dream world.
Okay, well, let's take a look. What do we got in store for us here, Dimitri? I haven't looked at these yet. I can't fucking read that.
So Zonic and I can read that. The Zonic and Glaive, no doubt. But Glaive and Navi and Blade sounds deadly is the first one. So that's obviously Zonic and Glaive. That's obvious where that's coming from. I mean, the best team of all time, and that's the coach and IGL combo from that. I think a lot of people would agree with that. And I saw a lot of people like replying with those two. Yeah, I mean, and then Glaive and Blade, I think, is the curious one as like a potential because Glaive ended up being free just kind of, I guess, just too late.
A little bit too late.
Just a little bit too late. Like, I think if that happened maybe 2 weeks earlier, maybe we would have potentially seen a different Navi. I'm curious if that could happen, you know?
Yep. Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, I think there's probably some other people who thought that as well. Okay, what else we got from the people? What else are they saying?
Yeah, I mean, now that's Blade and Aleksib easy. Guys,
another one. Okay. Well, how can you say they haven't even played a fucking game yet?
That's the thing, right? Like, I mean, that's the one that's kind of in the works. I'm curious about how that's gonna work. I don't know what you guys think.
This will bridge us, gentlemen, into our next conversation. We're gonna start talking about these teams.
We will start talking about them soon.
Yeah, so we can dive into it now, or we can wait a couple of minutes. Should we wait a couple of minutes?
I mean, we can wait a couple of minutes. We can just get the last one as well.
No, what's the last one?
I think that's the best one. That's the dream one.
Last one is
Bunch plus ENCE/Dexter.
Oh yes, great. Yeah. Well, Dexter went to Fnatic, so he didn't join Greyhound. I said if he joined Greyhound, I'd coach, but he didn't join Greyhound, so
that has to be ENCE then.
Well, I never said that though, did I, Striker? So no, I've got nothing. No, ENCE is a good lad. They're coming over to Europe soon to start boot camping, I think, for Cologne, which is nice. Get the Aussies out here, give them a couple of weeks to get ready. All right. That is Vox. That's the VoxPop. That's what the people are saying. That's the beat on the street. Let's go to an ad break. We'll be right back, and we'll start talking about Blast, which kicks off tomorrow.
It's a good vibe. It's a good vibe. It's a good vibe. Good vibe.
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on BitSkins.com.
Best esports odds. VIP program and a variety of bonuses. Fast and easy withdrawals. Bet on every possible CSGO match and tournament, as well as any other esports game. Only on 22Bet.
All right, baby, we're back from the break. We're going to get into the thick of things here. The season, we are back. We came back on Monday. That was the end of the tournament break. Some players, they were playing before that. Some players, they played the whole time. Some, I don't know, maybe they haven't even started playing yet. But 12 teams are going to be going down tomorrow, kicking off in Copenhagen for the Blast Premier 4 groups for 2023. It's broken up into 3 separate groups, 4 teams per group, and it's a GSL format. 50% of the field qualifies for the playoffs. Cool, I guess. But the bit that's exciting, the bit that we're all here to talk about is the complexion of these teams and what our expectations are. And maybe, just maybe, we can get Snappi and sAw to spill some scrim results for us. Maybe start, pointing a couple of fingers. But we'll kick off with Group A. It only makes sense.
And by the way, you guys must have played a lot of these teams just because you're not in the same tournament, right?
I'm not even sure we have. I mean, we played some of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
some of them.
But
Maybe like half of them, I guess.
Okay, we did quite a few, I guess.
Just by the amount of teams who make it into the arena. All right.
I mean,
so,
I just figured because like you guys are one of the few top teams who aren't in that group, you know. So there you
yeah.
go. Go ahead.
Thanks, Striker. Thanks, Striker, for rubbing it in again.
Sorry,
It's
man.
clearly a touchy subject. Thanks, Striker.
No, I
know
actually
they're
want
not a
to
blast
say
part
one
of the
thing
team.
on that actually, because people always think that I'm against the partner system. I've never been against a partner system. I'm against the fact that you don't let anyone else in.
Right.
That's the problem I have. Because
I mean, you can't be
obviously...
against the partner system because you're part
No,
of the,
like
the
that
other,
would make
the
me a
other
big
one.
hypocrite. But the point is, like, I've never been against invite to tournaments. I've never been against the best teams in the world getting invited. I'm not against the partner system if that is what the scene needs in order to survive. But I am against the fact that you cannot get into a tournament. That's the main issue I have. So, like, when you see, for example, a pro league, there's 32 teams. What is there? 16. Like, so there's essentially 16 teams getting in.
I think
And
15
even
it is now.
yeah,
But
okay,
yeah.
maybe, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
And even at all of these IEM tournaments, there's not actually a lot of spots go. Like, even though we are a partner team, if OG is above us in the ranking, which they often should be because they're a blast partner team, then they will get invited over us. There's nothing
Which
we
is
can
what
do
happened
about it.
before. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I just want is that circuit gets more open. I'm not telling them to remove their partner teams. I'm not telling them to add anyone essentially. But I would, for example, have liked to see this group stage be made of 16 teams instead, potentially make it 4 groups of 4 teams. The winner goes straight through, and then the second and third places can play each other. So you would get 6 teams going through still, something like this. And that is what I would wish would happen. So they could take 2 teams in that would go through the world ranking, for example, and then they could give a European and NA qualifier, something like this. There might be other, like I didn't really exactly think it through, but I would just wish that the system would be opened a bit more. And I think it's a misconception that people think I'm against the partner system, which is not the case. I'm against the fact that it's not a little bit more open to other teams.
Nice. Yeah. That's how I feel too. Yeah. All right. Let's we talk about Group A. Let's talk about the teams in Group A. We got Vitality, EG, and that's the opening game, and then we have NIP taking on Complexity. That's going down tomorrow. Now, just quickly, maybe you're interested in watching these games. The games are going to run from tomorrow, Thursday the 13th, all the way up until Sunday the 23rd, and then we literally go straight into Cologne. So you're going to have all of this Counter-Strike. Now, there are only 2 days of this format that are 3 best of 3s. That's Friday and Saturday of this week. The rest of it, every single day, is just 2 best of 3s a day starting at 3 p.m. So there you go. That's it for everybody if you want to be tuning into those matches and watching Counter-Strike.
But so crazy spread out, by the way. It's so crazy long for what it is.
Right? Like there's like it. Yeah. Anyway, I both ESL and Blast with Pro League and this really taking a couple of cheeky liberties, aren't they? So yeah, Vitality, EG, NIP, Complexity. So we can talk about these teams as a whole. We don't even have to talk matchup specific because I don't need to ask the two of you who the fucking favorite is between Vitality and EG. We all know, but I think we could ask out the gates. You look at a Vitality, a team who just won the major, so they're coming off the back of a massive tournament win, and they changed a player in the break. We asked you guys about not changing a player. These guys felt it was necessary. Get somebody like Flame, so I'm sure you hear a lot about through Nerds. What do you boys make of this Vitality roster change here, and what do you expect from them going forward?
For them, it's probably hard to match the last season, for example, because they did so good. But in a way, the change probably is more for the future, and like think about the roster, and maybe there won't be like a dip or anything, but maybe the expectations for them will be super high. So that's the angle they will have to probably fight with, like matching those expectations. How are they gonna handle maybe the pressure with that? But I would expect them to still perform good. So
do you look at this team and think it's Do you look at this team and you think it's just as good as it was, or do you think it's like just slightly worse than it was? Like, because again, this open conversation about anybody being able to win, right? Like Vitality are considered one of the absolute creme de la creme elite teams in the world. They made this change. We know it's the future thing, but does this set them back? Do you expect Vitality to have a lag time before they get back to the Vitality that we know?
for the start, maybe a bit of a setback because it does still like it's one change, but it does take time to implement that change, and they probably can't make all the positions like one-to-one fits. So it's gonna take maybe some time to get maybe to their peak, of course. So it's not gonna be instantly peaking, but still, like, is it gonna be a massive dip or anything? I don't think so. Maybe more or less the same. Result-wise, hard to say, but performance-wise, like how they play CS, actually more or less maybe the same. Like,
Okay. Are they more
Yeah.
scary now with flames? Does it feel like, obviously we know that he's young and he's got a lot of firepower to him. Does that make him more scary knowing they have like an extra X factor, and maybe the way that Apex likes to call and approach the game is good for, like, I'm speculating here. I'm trying to get your answer, but do you think he's a good fit for Apex's style of play?
Yeah, I think he is a good fit, but what will be interesting to me, like, obviously, I think this team is scary regardless for most teams because they have the best player in the world.
Sure.
Like, he's such an X factor when you play him. Like, whenever you play him, he is the player I am personally the most scared of.
Okay.
So he's an X factor. Obviously, they also have Spinks and Magis that are phenomenal players. I think Magis in general has been one of the most underrated players throughout his career, like playing a lot of very, very hard positions and doing an amazing job. So no matter what they would have done, like one change wouldn't make them completely non-scary suddenly. It's not like you fear a team when you go into them, but you respect their players. And one change, even if it wouldn't have been Dupree, you would still respect the players in that team. I think what's going to be interesting now is how they're going to implement flames, because Dupree was in a way in a lot of the typical in-game leader roles, actually. Like, he was running in a lot first. He was playing like B Mirage. He was angering a lot of the tougher positions. I don't think he had a lot of space. So I'm interested to see if they are gonna like put flames in a lot of the high impact position that Apex has, and Apex is gonna be running first, or like both for the T and the CT side. I'm interested to see if it's gonna be Apex that runs in and creates the space now, or if it's gonna be flames. And for CT, I'm interested to see whether they're gonna move Apex into more of the anchor roles like he was for a brief period, or if they're gonna keep him in where he is now, and then flames will overtake the Dupree's roles, because I think that's gonna also determine how good we can expect flames to be in terms of his numbers.
Yeah, I guess that, like, it's the balance. Like, then this is the thing when you talk about honeymoon period as well. A team like this, while they're trying to figure out what you're saying, if they're all fragging at a high capacity, they get to ride that honeymoon period as well. So, like, they get
I mean,
to
they
work.
have crazy firepower now. Like, imagine like Vitality of old used to be like everybody was saying, it's just Zywoo, like literally Zywoo carries everything. Now they have 4 pieces who can put up big
Sure.
numbers, So it's kind of crazy stack now, firepower wise.
But there was always a weird balance in that team with like Apex playing some positions that like he can get a lot of information and potentially impact from, but a lot of other teams would run a star player or like a bigger fragger there, right? So they already had some of those things. Like that, the conversation about Apex being around connector, there was a period of time just before that where, like, I don't think they had played Mirage at the major until one of like their final games. I forget which one it was, but I remember noting, like, because I was doing my prep before, and I was like, in the last few games I was scrubbing through, Apex was playing B, and now he's back to connector in this very important matchup, and I was like, what the fuck? So maybe they are gonna have an easy time just moving pieces around and trying and see what fits, and maybe they do just get this softer start to the year. They should already be qualified for the World Finals, right, Striker, because they won the major.
Yeah.
So, right, in terms of, needing to do well at full group, sure, you're trying to qualify for the Copenhagen arena. But in terms of, missing out on things later down the line, they should already be safe for
That
a lot
group
of
is
that.
pretty manageable, right?
That's true. They play
pretty...
EG in their opening game.
And I also think they have a pretty good style over the last, well, I guess actually after we played them at Pro League, I think since then they have the style changed, and I think it's pretty good now.
In what way?
Yeah, I was going to go
They
there.
play way faster and way less default with like initiative. I think they play more chaotic CS, which puts them into more scenarios where the good players can win the rounds in a 3v3 instead of playing perfect Counter-Strike.
Yeah, I mean that is something that they talked about, where Apex was like, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna play like I want now." So that makes sense.
Well, this is where the language thing comes in as well, and probably a conversation we're going to overlap with Navi very shortly. Okay, so it seems like relatively positive regarding Vitality in their start to the season. Like everyone has acknowledged good player, manageable group, so should be pretty straightforward for them here. EG, their opponent in this first game. This is difficult to get too excited about because I'm sure a lot of people at home haven't, unless you're North American, watched many Walco or George Schnortz type of games. You would have seen Hext, you would have seen Junior at certain points, right? They've come and gone on our screens over for Hext. It's more recently. For Junior, obviously, it's over the last couple of years. He was in Furia. Didn't really work out for him joining the Brazilians, but he's getting a chance back, and they've hooked up now with Automatic, who is the only remnant of the old EG team. I don't know. I'm not even going to put you two boys on the spot here to say a lot about this unless you want to. But I look at this roster and I think, okay, some newer names from North America that get a shot. Let's see what they have. That's about it.
Do you think, the one question here, do you think they will get closer to getting to the full final than the previous rosters have?
Probably, and I would say they're hungrier.
Isn't it impossible to not get close?
I mean, they did have that one heroic victory that remained their only best of 3 win against the top team.
No, but I
for the
would say
rest of
that
the year.
if the thing about the group stage is it comes at a perfect time for underdog teams, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty certain Vitality didn't go on a 1-week break and then came back.
Sure.
But EG
No.
might have.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Well, they've been boot camping. EG have been over in Europe. I think they're in Yanko's new facility, right? So they've been spending some time there. They've already been there for, I think, about a week. But maybe I'm not exact, but feels like about a week. So that's not a huge amount of time. But you're talking before that, maybe playing through, maybe with all these changes that are happening. Like the thing is with these guys, even though we're not expecting huge performances, I can tell you that the newer names are definitely hungry, right? That's the fact. Like they will, any opportunity, they're out for blood. NIP, what happened here? Hampus goes, yo, I'm back. And he's like, I'm back. And then NIP are like, wait, hold up. Hampus is back. He's a pretty good in-game leader. And then they get Hampus. People in chat are still saying, I don't know what. I'm going to close chat. We're good? We're good. All right. Anyway, my point's probably not as cool now that it's broken up, but I don't know what I was saying. Anyway, Hampus is back. sAw, what do you think about this change?
About the NIP change, well,
They lost to you today, mate. They lost to you today.
well, it is pretty interesting, like the change to international and then still kind of going back now, even though like not fully back, but still bringing hampus back. And for me, it just shows maybe that they are actually not so certain about the direction where they're going. Maybe the change will be fine. Is it gonna be a big boost? Probably not, but well, yeah, I'm not gonna change that much maybe in the end.
It's just like, it's weird with NIP. The conversation that we've had on this show quite a few times is like, well, how are we not getting more production out of Rez and Brolin, right? So where are we looking to pinpoint that? Obviously, we know now they have head trick and config. It just, that's still weird within itself. And then Hampus coming back after a decent hiatus. And you're right, like if they willing to just be like, well, see you later, Alexi, Hampus is back. It's like, okay, well, was he always just meant to be temporary? Like, I feel you're right. It does show that maybe they don't know what direction they're going either. And that's kind of plagued NIP now for 2 years. It feels like we've been talking about this ever since Device joined, right? Like academy players, and it's just been a mess. Maybe they need like a hard reset. I don't know. I did watch their match today on Ancient against sAw. I made a clip. It would have been so bad. I don't want to show it. Like, I feel really bad, but I was watching live on Muterus's POV at 15-13, and they were up in a 5-on-2 situation. Muterus was in donut. They didn't clear him. He was behind both of them, CT side, as they're walking in towards A to get the plant, and he just fucking panic whiffs. And then they end up winning this 2v5 situation. The game goes overtime, and if sAw lost that game, I don't know what I would have thought. I think I would have had a meltdown for them. But yeah, so NIP lose today, but it's the start of the season. What am I even meant to read into this? Teams have just come back. Hampus have just come back. Like, I can't read anything from a result. Like, I don't know what to think about NIP. They haven't gone anywhere. They haven't moved up. They haven't moved down. They haven't moved left. They haven't moved right. They're in the same position. They're just treading water. So what do we, I don't know.
I think it is like Ito said, they kind of need to find a direction. Stop changing positions like 24/7. Find out how you want to use different players and then accept it. Because to me, they've gone through so many stages of bringing in different academy players. Whenever I see them, someone has a new position. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I've seen them switch like back and forth. And I think it's hard to achieve consistency if you constantly do this. Obviously, you should maybe change positions sometimes if it makes sense. But if it makes sense every single month, then
it probably doesn't
it
make
doesn't
sense.
make sense.
It's not your kind of sense, mate.
Yeah, but then it's a lack of patience, right? And a lack of leadership and kind of someone putting down their foot and saying, no, you'll have to learn it. You will watch 10 demos with me if you cannot do it yourself, and that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough. Yeah. I guess we'll have to wait and see what comes of NIP this week. Maybe they're doing great guns out on LAN.
We have a great quote coming out with Hampus. We have an interview coming out, I don't know, probably soon.
Oh yeah, nice. Okay, we can look forward to that.
But they
one
did
there.
actually look decent with Hampus and DJL when DJL arrived to the team. I think
they had a good relationship. I thought.
Yeah, so it might be good.
Yeah,
for a time they had that consistency, even though they were constantly changing players.
I'm happy Hampus is back. I like me some Hampus. He's a good lad. Good to talk to.
It felt back then like they were missing roles like an Oper missing, and they were still getting good, decent results.
Yeah.
Without anything, but then suddenly now they're trying to do the right changes maybe, but it ends up looking a bit weird and the results is not going their way. And yeah, it's hard to say.
I mean, what do we think how do we think does it reflect on Aleksib? I mean, obviously he found a, like I saw somewhere that he somebody said that he's failing upwards, which is just a funny expression to me, because obviously he got kicked out of now two teams in a row, right? And still found even a better job. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, like he failing upwards.
It's hard to say, because I think a lot of the in-game leader's success is not only based on himself. Like a lot of it is, but it will also be based on like the relationship with the coach. It will also be based on the players. I've been in the situation myself where sometimes you have some players that are super overhyped, actually not that good, and sometimes you have some players like I think I have now, which are pretty underrated. So I think, I mean, some of it must probably be his own fault, but it could also be that he's been put in some pretty tough situations.
Okay.
With NAVI now, it looks like, well, they will have the fresh start at least. Like there's not gonna be any past things, and they will need to rebuild it from the start. So that's maybe a bit different from G2 and maybe NIP. Like they had something, but now it's actually a full-on start from the zero.
And they have some really good players.
Oh yeah, you like the pickups of it. Well, other than Simple, right? Obviously, but do you like the pickups of Ima and JL?
Yeah, well, obviously I can, like, it's a short period they had, but if you look at Bit and Simple, to me over the last 5 years, the toughest team by far I played was the Navi one. Like nobody even comes close in terms of how good they were, in my opinion. And I'm talking about the one with the Boomblood that won the major. Sure. They were really, really good, and it felt impossible to play them. And they still have two of those players. I think they will obviously miss Electronic. He's an amazing piece. They have those two players, so two very solid pieces. IM or whatever, I don't know how you pronounce his name.
IM,
yeah. He was just essentially one of the most impressive major MVPs had he won the final. So could it be a one-off? Yeah, maybe. But he did show that he can be really, really good. And then the last guy is Jail, and I think he's been good for a long time, obviously in the tier 2 scene. But if Jail is your worst player that is not the in-game leader, then you have a pretty good team, I would say. Like the individual skill is for sure good.
So are you hyped on this team? Like, are you looking forward to seeing them play? Do you think they're maybe not immediately, but after like a period of time where they get to work out the kinks here, they're a threat?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I mean, that will depend on the style and the leadership and the personalities.
But they have potential.
But
you seem like you're jazzed for it if it goes in the right direction.
Like it's an international team, they for sure have potential, I would say, yeah.
Okay.
What do we think about the balance of aggression? I mean, there's a lot of pieces that want to do stuff. I mean, even Aleksib is a type of an in-game leader that will be very aggressive. Ima, I mean, as we saw at the major, he's constantly the one taking early fights. Simple can do that sometimes too. Bit is just very aggressive in general as well. Like, do we feel like it's too much, or can it work?
Feels like they can't cater to everyone, so it's gonna be inevitable that someone's performance will take a hit. Who's that gonna be? Might not be obvious, I don't know. But yeah, because like you can't have everyone perform like the way they want, I feel like, in this team. But yeah, they do have good players, so if they can balance it out with the roles, with the system, everything, and well, of course, you will be able to post good numbers if you are winning a lot of the matches. So then, on the other hand, but I can't see that happening instantly. So I feel like someone will take that hit.
It feels like just to start this from scratch, though, for all the different elements coming together, it's not going to be an easy task, right? So we know that Simple can speak English. That's not a question. We know that Bit, play some pugs and stuff, probably is enough for Counter-Strike English, right? I don't think there's any dramas there. But it's the vision of how they want to approach the game overall. It's agreeing on common vernacular, right? Like what you want to say and how you want to say it to communicate certain things. And then once you've been able to iron all of that out, then you just have to put it into action. And we've heard from teams, and you guys can give an example of this. You're an international team. How are they going to go if they want to play like old, slow Navi, right? Like I feel like with English as the primary language, that seems to go out the window for a lot of teams. You guys don't play, like you have a range. You guys don't only play fast CS, right? I know, and we don't want to put you in a box, but like
everybody keeps bringing up that one quote that you did for us.
Yeah, I mean, people think we play like Fury, and I think that is so far from the truth. And that has become kind of a narrative for quite some times, despite us playing also pretty slow sometimes.
Sure, but then that's my point, right? Like you obviously have a varied game, but you don't play mega slow all the time, right? You're not like a team who just thought like we know that some teams can play that way.
Or VP.
Yeah, but so do you think that's like inhibited by language? Like, is that actually a contributing factor from your experience that like to play mega slow and to not make fuck ups, your comms need to be immaculate late?
I think it's better for national teams to play that way, but I don't think Navi was in the same super slow range at all as
a VP
as
or
Cloud9 and VP.
Okay.
I don't think you can. I don't think they ever played similar. I think they played.
I mean,
They didn't play fast.
Did.
They didn't play fast, but they played way faster than those two teams.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Aleksib, it kind of goes into Aleksib's court as well to be a little bit slower than just going out. So I think it's like that from that perspective. I don't have such a big problem with that.
I have no idea how they're going to look at all. I have literally no clue. I just think about this. To me, it just feels like it feels hard to decide how they're going to look, how they're going to play.
I don't think they can be terrible just based on the skill level, but
that's
whether they will be amazing, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, there was a vlog that came out with them, and they were talking about how this team got put together, and it was kind of Blade and Aleksib. It looked like Aleksib came in pretty early before the other two editions came in, so that Blade can have like the combo as we were talking about, IGL and Coach, who can kind of talk about the options together a bit. It looked like Blade was the main one deciding, but at least Aleksib seemed to have some input in the players that they eventually ended up getting. So there has to be an idea and some understanding between them, I suppose, if they ended up going this direction.
But it could also work because if Aleksib hasn't really been respecting his past coaches, because I've been in a situation where now that I'm with sAw, I trust him like no other coach I had. And if Aleksib can get kind of that same relationship and they can kind of facilitate that leader role, I would probably guess that Simple, no matter what, will also be have a pretty big say, right? But then I think that will be a big key to their success.
Okay. We didn't talk about complexity from Group A. That's fine. We can just quickly skim over them, I imagine here. I think the general consensus is EliGE is a firepower upgrade over Fang. Yeah?
No, go ahead. You can finish.
I was going to say, I start to flirt with the idea that, for me, I don't know what EliGE is capable of in the future, but I don't think he's done as a player yet, right? I think that if he thinks he can still compete and can bring that star out, the one that we know, right, then obviously we're having to return to form from some time ago now. And I'm acknowledging that fact, but I'm essentially saying he's not done. He has more to give, and he can be a really strong piece for complexity.
Yeah.
That's about all I look at here. I think that the team before was making slow inroads, but there were definitely some progression points for complexity. But
I think in terms of like all the changes that we've seen, this is the most obvious upgrades of all of them, like from the start. Like if you look at it, it's just piece for piece. It fits in terms of roles. It fits what EliGE wants to do compared to what Fang's role was. He has the experience, which let's say complexity have been missing. in terms of, you know, actually being able to win tournaments and like having that mentality, right?
But where does
And-
this elevate the team to? If I'm ENCE, I'll put myself in Snappi's shoes for a second. I don't think I'm scared of complexity. I think I respect them and understand the way they can approach the game, but I wouldn't say I'm scared of them. Does adding EliGE, like, I don't know if I'm scared still.
I mean, could be kind of like a stable top 15, you know, team that sometimes has like these flashes, you know, like
That's what we're
something
looking
somewhere
for.
around,
That'd be the
somewhere
next
around there.
evolution
I
for
think
sure.
I think for complexity, they'd be happy with that at this point, like just to make a like the step up where they would be competing for playoffs every now and again, you know, and making those appearances.
Are we excited by this? Are we meh? What are we, gentlemen? We're looking at our trophies, the silverware?
Yeah, Paul is retarded.
No, it's good. He should be proud. He should be. He's having a great time. You know, he's captain in Poland.
Captain Poland.
Captain
yes.
Poland with the IEM Dallas trophy.
One thing that EliGE will bring is like experience and maybe a bit of like winning culture to the team, which could help them in some of the tight spots, I guess, tight spots if they get into those. So that could be one upside. Other
Yeah.
than that, hard to say. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
they could I think they have a pretty good chance to actually go through this group.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree. I mean, they only the winner goes through like straight up.
Oh,
and
it's
then
only
they
the
go
winner.
into,
Okay.
it's only the winner
but
goes
then
through.
again, like if Vitality went on a long break, they like to have these like
Right.
boot camps without PC at the start of the season. Like who knows how many hours they have, right? I think complexity is a pretty like I think they were not terrible before, and I think this is an upgrade, so it could definitely be better. And also they have both Blast and ESL, so they're gonna be getting a lot of the very
Lots of
high
reps.
quality event, and I think they got lucky to get into Cologne also. So they essentially have a whole calendar lined up, so they have a lot of chances and not a lot of pressure to actually perform in the sense that they will get like 5-6 chances.
That's
Yeah.
a cool way to look at it. Yeah. All right. Cool. So if you're a complexity fan, you get a lot of chances to see if they can start pulling anything off. All right. Who else is in this group? Like Heroic, I don't know if we need to touch on. They didn't make a change throughout the break, understandably so. Who else is in this group?
I mean,
Well,
big is the one that I mean, we're heading into Group B now that we were starting to talk about.
yeah, it's
Navi already.
Astralis and big for
Yeah.
me. I don't. They promoted some academy players. They can't play Cologne with Man.
They didn't promote some academy players, did they?
Yeah, didn't they?
You
They
mean-
promote.
Camped some academy players.
That's kind of where I'm
That's
sitting
the
too.
Cologne
a little
thing,
bit.
right?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
my bad.
So the Cologne thing, they have to use. I think it's like Sensei alongside.
Sensei,
yeah. So to get the Cologne spot, so they can't use Mantu, but for Blast they can. So they can use their roster as it is. So they've got Sin, Prosus,
That's true.
Tabson, Crimbo, Mantu. And now they're going back to English, which they've done previously with Smooyers and Taras. So we're back here again. I can't with Big anymore. Crimbo will be the future Tabson, and he'll just be the franchise in-game leader of Big, and he'll never leave. And that'll be it. And the cycle will continue until the next one comes along. God be to Tabson, to Crimbo, to who comes next. I don't know. We have to find out in about 5 or 6 years' time, everybody. But I don't have anything to say about Big, and I want to watch him play. I'm always excited to see what fun stuff Godby and Tabson have been cooking up in the lab. But otherwise, I don't have any sage comments about these individuals. Does anybody want to raise their hand to talk about the Germans? Nine Dunker.
Nope. I mean,
I mean, we don't know. I don't personally know how. Maybe those academy players will be good.
We've seen Sin before. He played. He got to play an event with them previously. Prosus.
Yeah, I don't have enough insight to know if they will be good, but obviously, I think it's good that they at least try something new.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad to see Mantu back because I think as much as he wasn't some like super flashy piece in OG, I don't think he deserved to be away from the game for such a long time. I think that's one thing I'm glad to see.
Does he speak German?
No.
No.
They will speak English. I know people have been.
Was under
people have been
because he played in
consistently-
Alternate Attacks, which was a full
Nope.
German team, right?
Yeah, but he doesn't speak. They even confirmed that they will
I was
speak in
certain he
English.
spoke German.
I was certain he
Nope.
was as well, mate.
Nope.
I was talking about like a fucking authority figure a couple years ago. Like, why the fuck that big?
But I
is
mean,
that, mate?
this at least opens them up to potentially, if they're going to be speaking English, this opens them up to, if some of these players does not work out in the future,
More changes.
they are
yeah.
a team who have both Blast and ESL, which matters a lot to players.
Oh,
They
yeah.
could attract a very, very big talent in that case.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good take on it all. Okay. Let's jump into.
At least they have like a leg up over all these like Sprouts and whatever, like all these other talent
a
factories.
huge
let's say.
leg up.
Yeah.
A fucking country mile, mate. Astralis, were you guys blown away to see Glaive get sat down? Was that surprising you saw? That because that kind of blew me away. That was one of the more shocking trades in the offseason, seeing Glaive get the boot.
Yeah, I don't think it. Maybe it was the change that, at least for me, was like needed possibly. And yeah, it was surprising because now they are now it is a bigger change than like changing the in-game leader. But I
Feels like
feel
a whole new project now, doesn't it?
yeah, of course. For them, I do think they are one of the teams that can actually get in pretty good shape pretty fast because of being a national team, and then still sort of knowing each other more than the international projects might know each other, and then they will have more pieces to like put together, and communication is one thing. So I think Astralis has a good thing going for them there with the communication and being a national team.
You played with Borup, no, Snappi? Am I crazy? In Heroic?
I played with, I think, all of these players except. Oh, I didn't play with Stan Boss. Yeah.
What do you think about the Borup one then?
I never thought I didn't think he'd be coming back. I was surprised to see
I
his
think
name
it's
in
a
the
big
headlines.
step up. It's going to be a challenge for him. But I think they're going to be using him kind of as, I would say, probably the meat in a way, because flameZ is going to be the in-game leader now, and he's not going to be using himself. So they kind of need a guy who doesn't care being sacrificed. And in terms of that, I think he is pretty unselfish. So he probably don't mind doing the tough work and looking bad in the numbers. So in that sense, I think it makes sense. I think device obviously still amazing, and I think the stair pickup is also really good.
People in chat want to know that. What do you feel about the blamef in-game leadership, Snappi?
I think he has a lot of really good ideas. Actually, he's probably is one of, if not the hardest worker I've ever played with. So he's for sure gonna put in the work. Question is whether things will be like, he's obviously setting himself up, which means that he also has to do a lot of the heavy lifting himself. I think if he can transition into being a bit more unselfish, he can be a really good in-game leader, because he's actually very smart in the game and he's very hardworking. So if he can free himself up to do a little bit more dirty work, I think he can be a very, very good in-game leader.
Okay. Yeah. No,
I mean,
people,
I
people
think
wanted to know.
his strats are good. He does understand the basics of CS. So all of that is for sure going to be good. But I'm not sure, even if he is a good in-game leader in this team, I'm not sure that's the only thing that will stop them from failing, because I'm not really certain. It's not like you look at this lineup and you think, oh my god, they will just blow us out with firepower.
Sure. Yeah, so a couple of, like Buzz, for example, we need to see more from. Borup has been away for a while. Like, I think, like you said, I think Stair's a good pickup. Blame, we know we can get a lot out of, and Device as well. So it's a good call. Like, it's a good three in terms
the
of the
Device there,
firepower.
Blame of course is really strong now.
But that's
it
the
depends
problem.
on
That's
how
why
the
I
other
wish
two
they
pieces.
kept Glaive, because it could have been those three. Then Glaive calling the shots. He would have been the meat, as Snappi likes to call it. I don't think Glaive is done or was done. I think he could have stepped away. They could have, readdressed the way they want to approach the game or the meta or whatever, given like a nice hard reset, given him some good tools to work with, right? Like, let's say that you had the Stair, you had the Blame, and you had the Device, and then you've got Glaive as, let's say, fuck it, let's bring back Dupree. He's free. Well, he's not free, but he's available now. You bring back Dupree, right? You've now got a team that's like, fuck, they could actually be in striking distance of being dangerous at events, because they have the pedigree of what they need. The firepower's there with the three names we mentioned in the call: Blame, Stair, and Device. And then Dupree just won a major. But the question is, can Glaive return to being a impactful in-game leader? Right? That's kind of the question. And apparently Astralis don't think so.
But Blame was actually my in-game leader in Heroic for 1 month before he got bought by Complexity. I think he was pretty good there, actually.
Okay, Cool. All right. Well, endorsement from a man who played with him. Let's talk about Group C. That's our final group here. We're banging through. We're not having too many dramas at all. Group C has FaZe, OG, G2, and Liquid. As we know, FaZe and G2 didn't make any roster changes. Do you think that either of these teams should have looked at making roster changes, sAw? Do you think, hey, from the outside, you thought that maybe one of them would look to do something?
Well, with FaZe, I guess no. For me, I don't think they were in a position where they needed to do a change unless they felt like themselves that they need something new, like a fresh start or something. But if they can sort of keep it together, use the break to chill, reset, they can, and they probably will still be a really strong team. So why do anything at that point?
Yeah,
And
not worth the risk.
yeah, and for G2, it could be a similar case where they won two trophies with HooXi. So even if there was some disappointing results for them, then again, is it again a time to do a change at this point and try something new, or give it a bit more time and see where it takes us? And
You
then
guys,
how many options was there? Were they thinking about it? Hard to think about like what was their thought process, but the trophy thing probably should matter for them at least.
have you guys thought about like at all in terms of like when CS2 comes out and how much the status quo gets shaken up, and then when the next major is? Have you guys already like gone, okay, so yeah, it makes sense the next like big roster shuffle will happen in that next break, or do you think it could be triggered earlier, or like have you guys tried to project that into the future, or not even thinking about that shit at all?
No, I think as Eto said, like going one sec back, and then I will come to the question. Like I think both FaZe, G2, us, Heroic, Vitality, it was all of these 5 teams were in a position where there was no roster change that was needed. So it was really only if within the team itself anyone thought it was needed. Like it could be that someone was actually super annoying or some burnout, or just that you wanted to, like in Vitality's case, just secure yourself more for the future is I think what they said, right? But in regards to like when the major is, I think the next roster shuffle is going to be like 1 or 2 months into, or maybe 2-3 months into CS2 if some players doesn't adapt well. I don't think it is also maybe a bit premature to make spend a shit ton of money on players going into a game. You don't even know if someone is gonna fall off. Like if a player that has, let's say, 120 rating suddenly has a 10% drop off, he's worth 500k now. I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, that's
fair.
the problem, right? Like this, and this is the thing. This is why, like, Liquid are a team who've taken a risk on Rainwaker, right? And obviously, someone who's not very expensive compared to, I'm sure, somebody if they wanted to buy from Complexity, even if they wanted to get a good North American player, I imagine they would have been quite expensive. So, you have all these teams who are trying to weigh up and look at these costs and how everything can chop and change as we move into the future, and that kind of. We're slightly off topic here from Blast, but I'm interested from both of your perspectives here. But we've all, we're not, spring chickens. We've seen the game change over the years. We've seen different iterations of the game. How does it feel this time around with CS2? It's a whole new world. Everything's much more professional now that we're going through this. Does it feel that way? Does it feel more uncertain? Because we've been here before.
Yeah, but it's way different this time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I played 1.6 obviously, and I quit going, like I played CSGO a little bit at the start, but then I quit because it was not professional. You couldn't live off Counter-Strike if you came from a country like Denmark or Sweden, or like obviously I know Nip went full time, but if we are being serious about like what the average salary is, or like the minimum salary
It's
is,
not
even in
comparable.
Denmark, it wasn't even comparable to what you could make in 1.6 or even at the start of CSGO. Maybe if you won all the tournaments, you could maybe make a minimum salary from prize money, but that would kind of be the maximum, and that would require you to be number 1 or 2 in the world or something like this. So it is very different because this time people will be given a little longer. People are all in. Last time, half of the players that didn't transition or didn't transition well didn't even try to transition, and we judge it like they tried. Like there's so many 1.6 players that never even tried to go pro in CS:GO, like myself, and like 80% of the good players in Denmark. The entire MTW, which was essentially the best team, quit. But this time it won't be like this. So we will actually see this time who can adapt. Last time you never saw who adapted. You just saw who quit.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Like a lot of the good players did quit as well. Like people are like, well, we've had enough.
Yeah, they stopped for 3 years and came back, and then they were behind.
Yeah, I remember when the transition was happening, like the VP guys, the Golden Five guys were like, yeah, we're going to play League of Legends. They were talking about going to go play League of Legends. That's how shit they thought Counter-Strike was in the beginning when we had this, like when CSGO first came out. It's fucking crazy. Like, and that's a good point. Like, I haven't thought about it from that perspective because there are a lot of players who didn't even continue going at all. There wasn't like Gooks was one of those guys that didn't keep going.
There was fucking that list is miles long, man. It's really a lot of people.
It was legit 80%.
Yeah, and then we had the whole Source versus 1.6 thing, and we didn't even have all of the best 1.6 players still around.
Most of them didn't play. Like the people that transitioned was either people that were so young that they, at least from the people that transitioned, either came from most of it came from poor countries where it was still a livable, like you could still live off playing CS, or they were still very young. Or then there was also a few players like the Get Right Freiburg Forest who went all in and believed that CSGO would become big. But most of the old players, like old, I would say plus 20 years old, which is obviously not old, but they quit. Yeah. You saw Trace quit. No, he actually did play for a little.
Trace started for a bit.
Yeah, but Mine quit, right?
Yep.
Sonic quit. Ave quit. Who was there more in that team? Who was the last guy?
I mean, I'm thinking about the older lineup that was before.
Was Sunday playing then?
No, that was before.
No,
that was the version
Arcadian.
Arcadian was there.
Yeah. But you get the point that most of these players, they just quit. So you never even saw the best players transition.
Yeah. Okay, that's a perspective that I hadn't even considered this time around. So that's curious,
and a lot of them just took a few months break and like wanted to see where CSGO would go, and that was already too late. You know, you saw what happened with an IP. They started super late, super early. Yeah. And even like if you think about the Polish guys, you know, you were talking about, they did switch all of them at the same time, but they switched like 3-4 months later than an IP or whatever. Same with NAVI, and they were catching up. Like they weren't nowhere near the top at that time.
Well, so the teams that we were talking about here before I took us on this tangent, so apologies for that, everybody.
Okay, we're used to that.
We're just going to be OG and Liquid because you guys, both of you touched on FaZe and G2 for me. The OG one, it kind of feels like OG got left with the scraps, you know, like they managed to put something. Nex has come back to this. It's like he can't be too fucking over the moon, can he? Is it like I got to come back? I need a paycheck. Like it's not the most exciting project in the world, or am I being a little bit harsh?
You're talking about Nexa? I missed that.
Yeah, I'm talking about OG.
Okay.
It's not like all OG rosters. It's not blowing my socks off. I don't know. Is that fair? Am I being too harsh?
I mean, it is fair, and I think I don't know where Nexa is sitting, but I'm pretty sure he's somewhere on the edge of his contract. I think like half a year. If he got a 2-year one, I'm pretty sure.
More uncertainty, man.
Yeah, so I think for him it's maybe like just let's see how this goes, and if in a half a year before CS2 I get a better offer or something. So that could be the deal, you know. But I do agree with you, and I said this earlier. Like I think OG and Fnatic were the two teams bottom of the barrel out of the partners who had the least power to make the moves that they wanted, rather than just because they didn't have the money to make like some big signings. You know, let's say they would try to get a Boros or an Emer or something like that. They didn't have the money for the buyouts, and you know they didn't have the other players to attract even some of these big pieces. So they had to go with budget picks that also, you know, maybe aren't super exciting.
Yeah, it's the rosters. Both those teams you mentioned, Fnatic and OG, they're just like, okay, they're teams that exist and they're going to compete, and they might just squeak into the major. Right, that's essentially it. Like I'm not excited by any of those teams. So
I am really concerned about the firepower in the OG team. Like I don't like Regali.
Who's it coming from? Regali killing everybody. He won me 5 in every round.
Fasher used to be a big piece, and I mean in Fnatic maybe he wasn't in the same exact positions, but still like he didn't have the best transition into tier 1, at least, you know, numbers wise. And like it's not like Keto has flashes, you know, but he's not like we expect him to be a big star. Fiku never was, you know, Nexa never was really. So it's kind of like you have one star to rely on.
But I mean, I think the Fnatic team can actually come okay.
Well,
Yeah.
it relies on mezzi going back to being a star, right? And Roy
But
finding
I
the
think
Copenhagen
Afro
Flames
can
form.
potentially become good. Messi is gonna be released from his in-game leading duties, so he can potentially be a star. I think Dexter was always a bit underappreciated from my like where I sat. I don't think he was as bad as people kept saying. And with the OG lineup, it's true they don't have a star, but then again, all of these players was also put into positions where they couldn't be a star player. So what's gonna happen in OG now is they're gonna have a lot of roles open that people can potentially be good in. I'm not saying they will be, but they have been used to being with like Fico was like the support player. Vasha was in a way like the odd man out in Fnatic because Roy was playing the good roles and was Nico, and then I think it was a bit shared, so he didn't play a lot of good roles. Then Tapson was playing the good roles in Big mostly, so someone can potentially get an upgrade and maybe
Okay.
surprise us in terms of his numbers.
All right.
That's a cool way of looking at it. They're like, because even just that framing, like as opposed to just the closed-minded Chad Bircher going, yeah, it doesn't look like there's enough firepower. It's like, well, now there's a lot more opportunity, and now we get to see if any of these players or names do have more gas to give when they get more responsibility, when they get given positions where they can potentially shine a little bit more, right? So that framing gives us a lot more to talk about, Striker. So it's definitely better from that perspective. So
far not the best. I mean, they lost to like a Polish kind of semi-mix on the way in the Gamers 8 qualifier.
It didn't go well for them, but it didn't go well for MOUZ either. It didn't go bad for Bad News Eagles. Got fucking rocked. Bad News Eagles got absolutely rocked by this like Danish stack. They just got fucking destroyed on Anubis. So I was trying to consume a lot of the games yesterday, but it was a couple of first days back from the break. So do you have strong feelings about OG or Liquid? Either of those not excite you, but interest you?
You would maybe expect more or be like wanting more from them, because these changes are like, it's a good point. The individual might be like, some individuals might be showing more now, but as a team, maybe they just won't be showing much more. Like, can they really do a lot more? It's good enough players to make them stay high enough to get to the tournaments, possibly do good runs here and there, but is it gonna be good enough? Or like, I would want more from them, I feel like.
Sounds like we're describing gatekeeper teams here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like that's essentially what we're describing here. Like teams who they're professional, they're on the cusp, they can be threatening any given Sunday, but realistically, they're just going to be warding away these teams coming up and trying to invite themselves to the party. Like, which is, I guess someone has to fill that role.
We'll see if even that's the case. Obviously they are a partner with Blast, but not with ESL. There we go. I had to think about that for a moment.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So I mean, just Blast alone, unless they do pull off some of these runs that they did before, but they would have to make it to the finals, to get a bit more points, to get into the ESL circuit. Especially now that they lost a bunch of players. They did keep a bunch of points because like Keto had some points from Big and whatever. They even got the invite to Cologne, which is kind of crazy when they changed 4 players. I saw that and I was like, man, that's really interesting. So I mean that will run out. That will run out eventually. The fact that they got Cologne really helps them now, because that will probably, if they do at least reasonably okay there, at least they're going to keep some points and just keep going until the end of the year and maybe get a few more chances, to keep there. But yeah, it really depends on the start. If they get a bad start, they don't do anything at groups, they don't do anything in Cologne, those points are going to run out quickly and they're going to lose these chances.
Okay, so Liquid is the last real team that we need to address here. The Counter-Strike world was pretty disappointing. I know the North Americans weren't very happy with this, them moving away from a North American core. Obviously, it's just NAF OC. We've done this to death here. This team today, there was an article, was it Demps that put it out, looking at Rainwaker, which is a player from 500 that maybe people who are only watching upper echelon of Counter-Strike wouldn't be too familiar with. So if you want to go check that one out, it shows you the positions and how that might all mesh up. But I assume Liquid will be making more changes. And we know that Patsy's in the roster as well from Spirit, but Patsy hasn't had any crazy good performances in recent time, but also hasn't played an official in quite some time. So this Liquid roster going to be in Europe a bit more. Is this another team, Snappi, that you go, okay, like Navi, you were thinking it has potential. Is this the team that you put in a similar category?
No, they're not in the Navi category because I think Navi has some players that are just they just have so many good players and they have simple also. I would say you said the Rainmaker was a big risk. I think there's two big risks that they made that are even bigger. I would say.
Okay.
I think the Patsy alongside Yakinda is just as big a risk, and I also think Yakinda as an in-game leader is just as bigger a bigger risk.
Okay.
I think Rainmaker is the least risk they took because he will just fill out a lot of the bad roles, and he actually showed really good numbers in tier 2 and in general. A player that I think when I have seen him and we played them a few times. I think he's not a bad player at all. I think that's the least risk they took. I think that's probably going to work out fine, unless they want someone to point the finger at because he has maybe worse numbers. So yeah, I'm curious to see how they make the other two things work.
What's the hesitancy with the Yakinda in-game leading? You think it's just like it's not something that he's cut out for? He's too young. Excuse me. Is there anything that makes the Yakinda in-game leading more worrisome for you?
I just remember myself when I was younger, and you were like second in-game leading. He probably also knows this. When you're second in-game leading, it's so easy to like know, this call would have been better in this situation because you don't have to call 30 rounds. So I think that can easily carry you away. So it's going to be a big challenge. You might be the best in-game leader in the world. I can't know. But it's going to be a big challenge to see whether it is kind of like a thought that just came in because he thought his old in-game leader was calling some bad calls, or if he's actually made out to be an in-game leader. And yeah, then I think he has a big role clash with Patsy because they essentially play the same roles on every single map.
Right. Hyper aggressive
And hyper aggressive. They like to go for the plays and boost those entry numbers, you know. So I think I'm curious to see that.
Yeah. All right. Are you as equally as interested to see that that change, sAw, or is this for you? You know, all a bit of a mess, or is it just like is Yakinda and the Patsy the bigger risks? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, it could be a bit of a mess in a way that now they do need to build a system, and it's not only in-game leadership for Yakinda. It looks like also like other kind of
Emotional
leadership will
leadership,
be needed. Yeah, and it's a lot on his plate. And then on the other hand, you do have Rainmaker Patsy in the first international teams, like learning as they go. So
Good point
there's
too. Yeah.
a lot they need to figure out, and it just might be too much for them. Obviously, if they can do it, it's super great for them, and they have some good pieces, but it's a lot.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
curious about one angle that I haven't really considered or heard about being discussed is about the voices in the team. Because I mean, if you look at Yakinda, that's obviously, I mean, he's taking over in-game leadership. He was already
Now it's
talking a
not
lot
going to be
before.
noisy.
Nav's not noisy. I mean, OC, from what I've seen, he's also fairly a quiet type, also kind of passive, right? I can't speak to Rainmaker because I've never like seen him in person, like act around the team and things like that. Patsy, I know from Spirit, he was fairly vocal, but his English is kind of, it's not terrible, but it's obviously going to take some time to get used to speaking in an international team. You know, it just takes some time. He is obviously an aggressive piece, and he's going to be calling out a lot like what he wants to do. So I'm sure he's going to be like another voice. But if they are in the same roles, you know, you still need somebody on the other side of the map and things like that, you know, to help out a lot. And there's like some concerns over like NAF and Rainmaker clashing in their roles. So I think Snappi is right in that maybe Rainmaker is going to have to fill in some of the gaps, unless, you know, we see NAF, you know, shift positions.
I'm not so worried about Neff and Rainmaker.
No. Okay.
No.
I mean, compared to Yakinda and Patsy, I know that's that. I
no, but I'm
that
more
part.
like because I think they're gonna anger a position each, and they're gonna be maybe one of. I think maybe they need to make one of them a little bit more aggressive on the T side, like one of them being more of an aggressive lurk, but that should be doable to probably do with Rainwake, and Neff is probably a bit more set. He's an older player, but it seems like no matter what you make Neff do in game, he always finds a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, he seems to be a very smart player and very versatile, at least historically. Lately we've seen him play pretty much the same thing, but so that could be a place where they adjust for sure. Yeah.
So, gentlemen, I guess the one thing we didn't do when we were looking at all of this, so the format for everybody, right? We've got these groups. The top team from each group is going to qualify, and then every other team who doesn't qualify from the initial group stage goes down to like the single elimination bracket, which is a bit of a gauntlet to lock in the next 3 teams, right? So let's go through quite quickly. We could do this in a bit of a speed round and see if anything steps off the page here. Group A, I guess Vitality to go through in first place. Is any objections to that? Even with flameZ is the new addition. Everybody in this group has 1 roster change.
That is the most obvious, yeah.
Okay, so Vitality through, no objections. Cool. Everyone's quite happy with that. Group B, I guess you would have to say heroic, but you have the unknowns in the water here. So would if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I think heroic would be the safest of the calls here because everything else is unknown and I don't have a crystal ball. So we'd have to say heroic, right?
They're also not that bad at like slow starts. They don't really get off to like heroic are pretty solid. I mean, apart from that one loss to EG, basically. I guess that also happened at the Blast group. So who knows? Maybe they lose to Big off the bat, and the one of NAVI or Astralis, whoever wins that game goes through.
And then this one, we continue to be no-brainer. Derm is the captain obvious here, but it feels like it is between FaZe and G2, and whichever one of these come in with better form, because that's it. It's teams who both play the game in quite similar ways, both have very good firepower. It's just who's going to show up and bop more heads on that day for these 2 teams. This is just the start of the season. So, yeah, I don't know. We've done this. I've said we should do this, and it was a waste of time fucking doing it because it doesn't even fucking matter. We're just here getting a taste of all these teams, essentially.
Yeah, said all the teams that didn't change had changed the least.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
bound to be, so who do we see as the biggest
to be
chance?
some surprises, right?
So where do we see the biggest chance of an upset? Let's go.
But even that, it's like throwing darts at like blindfolded.
Yeah, you
here.
can, but
like,
I mean,
which out of all the teams with the roster changes at this event do we think has the most?
I think
potential?
NAVI will win Group B. There you go. I'll put in.
Okay.
Something.
Fucking hell, Striker. That's the hottest take you've had.
I have
years.
I mean, it's only like if NiP or Complexity win, will they only need to win 1 match against Vitality to qualify?
No, probably 2.
Okay, well,
because it's a full double elimination, so there's.
But it could obviously happen just because they have been playing more than Vitality potentially.
Yeah, I mean, Vitality could just get off those.
I think Vitality is going to qualify.
Yeah. But yeah, it is a full double elimination. So like some of these upsets, even if it happens in the first round, there's like even a heroic lose to Big or whatever, like they will go through the lower bracket, probably go to the final and beat whoever is going to be there.
This is it with this event, right? Like because of the format and there are going to be a bunch of games and 50% of the field makes it through to the next stage, right? The stakes are quite low.
It's pointless to do predictions just because it's not the point of the tournament anyway.
Exactly. But also, essentially what we're trying to learn here is how the new rosters look, how good the old teams are to start the season, and the teams that have made minor upgrades if they look like they're headed in the right direction. That's essentially it. And even that, you can't even gauge the field because whatever goes wrong here, they're going to be fixing from day to day over this week and a half event. And then they have to go straight into Cologne, right? Unless they're not in the play-ins and then they skip a couple of days, sure. But then you go to the main event. The group stage, not the main event. And then you get things underway, right? So this is all going to happen so quickly. And all this is about is who can put their ducks in a row ASAP and have their people hitting shots as quickly as possible. That's it, right? Yeah. This is a sprint. The start to this season is a sprint. Get the fuck out there, get working, let's go. That's it. And can we be top of the mountain shortly? Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I mean, they can also use a lot of, as I said, like it's very spread out, so teams can use a lot of this time just to practice additionally, or just do some more theory to figure out what exactly is going on wrong in these games. There's actually that's like a 10-day boot camp, additionally for teams. So that also gives them plenty of time to just adjust things, Just historically, blast groups haven't been particularly telling of teams' form throughout the season. It doesn't really mean anything. I mean, we saw like as an example, like OG, always did pretty well at these groups, but then throughout the rest of the season, not so well.
They deserve the World Finals, right?
Yeah, I think you're talking to the wrong person here, Snappi.
No, he's preaching to the choir.
Yeah, exactly.
Over here, like there's nothing we can do, nothing that can be done. I think the thing is, I'm noticing community sentiment seems to see it a little bit more, to do with how things are. But hey, at the end of the day, like It's their
Look, it
business.
is still like I have to say, like, as much as all the criticism is right, I mean, it is still a great tournament to start the season, you know, in terms of like just getting engaged on things, all of these new teams, you know, always getting some time to ramp up. You know, it is the best way to start a season, not too seriously, you know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I remember like a year and a half ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I remember like talking myself into the fact of being like, no, it's okay. Even though we know all the teams are all in this together, we just will use this as a soft warm up for the year. Like we know that the games don't have high stakes,
Yeah.
but we can at least check out the new roster changes. It's like, what am I? Why am I doing this myself? Does this have to exist? No, probably
Yeah.
not. Could we do it better? Yeah, definitely. Okay, well we're still
It's
here.
just the whole thing about like, even if you lose the first group, then you have the single elimination, like the bracket, and then if you lose that, you still have you still have the showdown, you know, to get to
Exactly, right.
the fall final, right? So I mean,
But if you're Snappi, you're playing 6 qualifiers that are all single elimination and most of the time best of 1, and then one team out of
Or nothing. Last
or-
time we couldn't even play. They put the Finnish
Oh, yeah, with
qualifier on top
clashing,
of
right?
Pro League.
Yeah, well, hey, you know, maybe
You
they don't
sounded-
want you
you
there,
sounded
Snappy. I wonder
very-
why that would be.
It sounded so Finnish there. I don't know if it's just you staying in Helsinki or something, but you should listen back to yourself, and I would have been convinced that you're Finnish.
It's his fault.
Yeah, making now too proud. Okay, so lads, do you have anything else you want to say about any of these teams? We jump into playtime. There's a couple questions here that people have been submitting, and you guys have had a long practice. I don't really want to keep holding you for too much longer.
Yeah, I've been already going. Let's go.
All right, let's go into playtime. Don't roll the bumper, Dimitri. We don't need to roll. Let's quickly see if I can find this tweet. I had it up on my screen moments ago. This is the thing with tweets. You start clicking and then you end up God knows fucking where. And then I'm hitting back and I'm not finding it. But
yeah, I mean, there was a bunch of very, let's say, interesting questions, like Snappy's skincare routine, his phone number, and if he's ever tried a famous Czech cola knockoff. Then
What?
there was like a drink in Czech Republic that's like kind of like a Coke, except like a little bit different and different on purpose. Whatever, it doesn't matter. There's a backstory. But there was some. It was just a guy I had a conversation with on Instagram who's apparently an avid follower of Confirmed, so doesn't matter.
Here's one we've got. So somebody's asking questions about the ENCE Academy. So I'm going to just hijack the ENCE Academy as a concept to ask a question about here. Do you have anything to do with them at all? Like, do you sometimes scrim against them? Do you ever look and see what players that they're bringing up to see if maybe it's anything for the future? Do they have any involvement? Because I know that. Well, I don't know. They're running it like NIP are doing theirs, right? NIP's is all Swedish, and this is all Finnish, right? Keeping it a bit more regional with the academy rosters. Is that right?
It is more interesting for us just because of the name, and also for me because they're Finnish guys. So it's interesting to follow how they do and see how they play. And we did use one of them like in this tournament as a stand-in. So that was a good experience for him and for us to see how he does and how he did. So yeah, I would say also, yeah, just because of the name, it's more interesting for us to follow up on them. It's maybe not that we are so much in daily doing something with them or even that often overall, but just following on them, helping every now and then if we can and if they ask for it. So
okay, yeah, sweet. We got one here. I guess we can kind of condense what we spoke about just before, but I can get this from both of you here independently. With all the roster moves that happened, what are the top 3 that you guys are excited about? That's probably a nice way to package this up.
The one that isn't announced.
Oh, the Cloud9
If
one. We
it's
haven't
gonna
spoken
happen.
about that
I
one
actually
yet.
have no clue if it's gonna happen, but if the rumored Cloud9 roster is gonna happen,
That's
one is
crazy,
number
right?
1.
Yeah,
Are you gonna be scared of that one?
They have a good team in that case.
It's a really good team, right? Like it's almost stupid how perfect it could be, and nobody even knew that it was a possibility going into the break. Like you just see it as like, fuck. Like, is this thing real? But do you think that's going to be the case? It's one of these scenarios where it's too good to be true. Like it comes together and it's just dysfunctional as fuck. It just doesn't work for some reason. Like it looks too perfect that it couldn't possibly work. I don't think
it's like it couldn't possibly not work. Like it cannot be worse than this Cloud9. It has to be at least on par or better.
Yeah, well, I think so. I think this.
I don't know. What do you think it?
that is the top 1 move if it happens. Like for sure, there's no questions about it. I think in anyone's mind, really.
So number 2, number 3.
Yeah.
What are the runner-ups?
Number 2 is maybe Falcons.
Okay.
Okay.
That's an interesting one. For people who aren't aware of,
Boros,
NBK and Body
Lonks.
stayed from the previous team, and then they added MHL, Boros, and Lonks.
I mean, I think the three players they brought in is good prospects, all of them. Maybe one of them won't work, but then they still brought in 2 other good prospects. Yeah,
Could still say Vitality for third or possibly
maybe
like
also.
yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like this Navi roster is just super interesting. So that's like because of that, it's maybe not that it's like a highest change that in in performance, but
But
it's
it is
just
the most
super
interesting,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, like that's what I'm looking forward to seeing how they play.
But
No,
the why it's so interesting is because it can go so good and so bad,
at the same time.
and we have no clue, right?
Yeah, we're gonna get to see all of it kind of unfold here, which is I guess half the fun of all of this. We get to, then people are going to be tuning in, big brand, new direction. Like it's going to be crazy to see what the fanfare is like, and that's going to be going down Friday with Navi versus Astralis. Like it's a blockbuster fixture as well. So that'll be fun to get to watch. Is it good for you guys to get to watch these teams go out there and poke in the dark here and see what they have to offer before Cologne? Like you get to be a little bit prepared. It's like, oh shit, we get to see at least what bomb sites some of these players are playing. Like you can make some assumptions, but even just being able to call basic Counter-Strike at the moment must be hard against so many new rosters, right? Like having to, even in practice, I imagine you're penciling this down. Oh, this cunt's playing here this time. Like I'm sure that you're taking notes. So is it a pro or a con to get to watch them?
And that's the pro of not being at the event, maybe that we get to see them instead of playing against them instantly there, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a pro for sure that we have some data when we go into Cologne. We at least know if they play B or A.
Yeah.
Just for positions.
Yeah, I think for all for the other teams, like they obviously we had some time to prepare and create new stuff, but they will still have a lot of data on us, obviously.
Sure.
Do you, just to quickly touch on that, do you subscribe to the idea that moving on at some point in the future, CS will become positionless? Like where people will just become much more versatile?
Maybe besides the opening game leader, but
I mean, sure,
the
yeah,
rest of the team,
with some
right?
limitations, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't really believe in it either.
Like routine creates good habits.
Fair enough.
Okay. Do you see like in certain player types as well, like similar personality traits? Like with players that are like more anchory or more clutchy, like they're a bit calmer or whatever. Like do you start to see those things? Because I always think with players who are good at space taking, you need to have like a certain amount of, first of all, I don't give a fuck attitude, but intuition as well, which is what is like you taking some of these risks as a space taker based off of your inbuilt intuition as to what you like. And not every player, not every person has like a strong, oh, I can take this gamble, I can punish this risk, because they're more used to being procedural and slow. And I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know. There's no question here.
Those
I don't think there's-
personality
maybe I think there is one trait that is pretty. I think like one big trait is whether a player is unselfish or selfish. And I think Orbers a lot of the time tend to be selfish, which is a good thing.
For the Orba?
Like in game. Yeah, like I'm not talking about like that they need everything, but most Orbers also kind of like you pick up the best gun because you want to frag.
That's fair.
Okay. Yeah. No. Fair. Yeah. And that's that bit of ego that you need to have.
You need
to be
like maybe selfish is not the best word, because it is also in a way unselfish to wanna like do the best for the team, which essentially is to be selfish. So maybe ego is a better word, but yeah, obviously an entry fragger needs to be kind of unselfish.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's put a bow on this one, shall we, gentlemen? Is do you have any more questions here, Striker? You see anything popping up in the Twitter sphere or threads if you're using that, or anybody tweeting anything? Not tweeting anything, twitching anything out here that's in the comments that you want to ask, or are you good?
There was just one about the saw's idea of reviving Finnish CS at some point in the future. I mean, there are a couple of pieces, I guess.
Yeah, it's maybe not that easy of one task right now, but the good thing is we have now Aleksib, Jimpphat moving up, so there are some pieces, and then the ENCE Academy project I do like. There could be potential players rising up, and then we have some other teams. Maybe the Finnish scene would need one more shuffle between the teams, to make one of them rise a bit higher and potentially mix things up. They get new ideas to different teams. Overall, to get it to the highest level, you would need Aleksib and Jimpphat in a Finnish team then. And it's a shame, like some of the Finnish potential going to Valorant, for example, which is limiting us a bit, I would say. But maybe in the future it will rise up. But for now, like anytime soon, I can't see like a Finnish team suddenly doing a rise.
Pretty
Maybe in
somber out there.
CS2.
Yeah, there you go. The hype comes back. Everybody comes back. We can hope so. We're not too far away from that, hopefully. I don't know. Anyone know anything? But gentlemen, it's been great to have the combo of you two on the show here today to get to pick your brains about a lot of these roster changes now that we've finalized almost all of them. Lads, I'll throw it to either of you here or both. We can do both. Is there anything you lads want to say to the people at home before we close this thing down tonight?
Thanks for watching and good night.
He's finished.
Short and sweet.
It's
All right.
late. It's midnight now here.
Oh,
Been
shit.
going for some
All right.
time.
Well, let's get the fuck out of here. Let's let him get to bed and keep on pracking. Good night, everybody. We'll be back next week with another episode of HLTV Confirmed.
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on BitSkins.com.
Best esports odds. VIP program and a variety of bonuses. Fast and easy withdrawals. Bet on every possible CSGO match and tournament, as well as any other esports game. Only on 22Bet.
It's a good vibe, it's a good vibe, it's a good vibe, good vibe.